Chapter 303. Dear List. After receiving the new version of serene, I was so happy that I almost went crazy. I could not wait to grow wings, fly to your side, and play a song for you. Or listen to you play for me in an uninhibited manner, just like that day on the dance floor when you played Beautiful Note. You know how much I miss the memories left behind in the Long Taro Castle. I have packed my luggage, and was ready to go to the Coral Island and the Flower Town to look for you. My maid Lua can testify that she is in charge of the luggage. But my father stopped me because I was about to marry the son of a marquis without any emotional foundation. This is my destiny, and I cannot escape it. From the moment I was born a woman of the Hyacinth family, I knew that such a day would eventually come. I would accept the support of the family and become a tool for marriage. But I hope to see you again before I get married, to enjoy a moment of passion, and to dance to the sound of serene. Dear, you will come, right? You know that I am waiting for you here. Eagerly looking forward to it. Yours, Duneko. The knight who rushed to the castle brought List such a letter. The letter was sent from the Red Crab Island, and the sender was Duneko Hyacinth. After reading the contents of the letter, he could not help but fall into silence. Duneko obviously still had feelings for him. Coupled with the complete version of serene that he had sent, he took the initiative to tease her, igniting her passion. She even wanted to come to the Flower Town to play the piano and dance. Thinking of the exciting scene of that night, his heart was suddenly filled with fire and respect. He could not wait to immediately take a ship to the Red Crab Island and continue his relationship with Duneko. However, he did not do so. Just keep it as a memory. The passion without emotion is over. This is not the life I want. If he wanted passion, then it was not that there was no passion in the Flower Town. Paris and Little Lily were both good-looking women with good figures. As long as he wanted to, he could definitely indulge himself. There was no need to look for Duneko. Therefore, after putting down the letter, he did not reply, nor did he plan to go to the Red Crab Island. He just put the letter in a night novel that he would not read again. It's my fault for teasing you. I'm sorry, Duneko. The passion had faded, and the smoke mission could not be kept. Moreover, he did not have time to go. It would be March 9th in 4 days, which meant that he would turn 17. On the 9th of March last year, he was in Theft as Baron. The next day, he ate the poisonous fruit of the Thorn's Ridge and became a completely different person from the inside out. Master, this is Mrs. Abby's luncheon menu. Please take a look. Butler Carter had already begun preparing for the birthday party. To him, every banquet was a tough battle comparable to the charge of a knight. He needed to be fully prepared. List took the menu, glanced at it, and handed it back. Let's follow this menu. It's only my 17th birthday this year. It's not an important birthday, and there's no need to invite anyone. It's just a party for my followers. Mr. Carter, please be at ease. Butler Carter smiled. Master, your birthday is the most important day for us. With a smile, List did not say anything. This was both flattery and the truth. In the castle, he was the most important person, and all the servants lived around him. Brother, is your birthday coming? Yes. In the Shellwood building, the siren Chi asked curiously, will there be a lot of people gathering at the birthday party? It must be very interesting. Does Chi remember her birthday? Chi tilted her head. I don't know. Chi only remembers that when she woke up, she was in a shell. Then she was very hungry, so Chi went to find something to eat. Living like this in the sea, when she has time, she will listen to the sailors on passing ship. Then, let's take the day we met as Chi's birthday, how about it? Okay, it's January 11th, no, it's January 12th. It was already past midnight that day. Chi remembered it very clearly, so her birthday was set as January 12th. Chi has begun to look forward to next year's birthday. Will you celebrate Chi's birthday? List said, it must be celebrated. At that time, a chi should have become a chi Lloyd's truth. In fact, a chi can now be called the truth magician. A chi suddenly smiled slyly, stretched out her hand, and 2 water arrows suddenly appeared. She aimed them out of the window and gently pushed. The 2 water arrows instantly turned into a dozen water arrows, flying into the sky and disappearing. She has learned the water arrow volley that only magicians can master, and it is particularly easy to cast, without the need for a process of gathering power. Liszt has seen Glanny and Elkson cast magic. Although skilled magic is also very fast, there will still be a more obvious accumulation of power. For unskilled magic, it takes a long time for a magician to cast it. This is also one of the reasons why the magician can't beat the knight, and the knight rules the world. Before the magic can be released, the knight has already charged at close range. But for a chi, the water arrow volley is basically instant. This made him curious. A chi, don't you need to gather power when you release magic? No, a chi has engraved the magic array into her body, and she can release water arrows through the magic array at any time. It's very easy and simple. This is the so-called genius magician. Liszt could only understand it this way. If other magicians knew about this, they would probably commit suicide out of shame. The so-called magic that took them several years to master was only a few days for a chi. Instantaneous casting was a matter of course, and she could summon countless water arrows with a wave of her hand. The only pity was that a chi could only be compatible with water magic and could not learn other types of magic. This made her combat ability seem more monotonous. However, considering that she was a sea creature, the sea was her broad stage, and specializing in water magic was an advantage. Study hard, a chi Lloyd's truth. The magician is only the beginning of exploring the truth, and the future is still broad. When you become a great magician, you will be able to appreciate the true wonders of magic. At that time, maybe you don't need my help, and you will be able to kill Gyurumita yourself. Well, a chi will definitely become a powerful great magician and defeat Gyurumita. Having said that, Gyurumita has never appeared between Flower Town and Black Horse Island. I'm afraid that the siren has already left the sea and returned to the sea where it lived. Time flies, and in the blink of an eye, the day of his birthday arrived. His sister Elvira sent a knight to deliver a batch of vegetable seeds. The climate of Falcon Town was pleasant and the soil was relatively fertile, very suitable for growing vegetables. This gift was very shabby, probably because she was still upset about Liszt's birthday gift of flower soap. His grandmother, Madame Penelope, sent a potted plant. Perhaps thinking of the black nightshade that bred the black nightshade worm, she expected Liszt to give her another one. However, Liszt checked the potted plant and found no signs of magic. His brother, Levis, entrusted his tutor, Frank, to send him a magic equipment, a flame bracelet. The bracelet was carved and connected with red crystals. Red crystals with fire attribute magic could increase fire attribute chi. It was a very expensive birthday gift, and it should have been prepared before he went to Golden Island. However, what surprised Liszt the most was Chapter 304. If there is a piano in the scene, I will sing to you. This was not the melody that came to Liszt's mind, but it was very appropriate. When the piano was carefully carried to the study on the second floor by the servant, Liszt only felt a lot of inspiration blooming, colliding with his brain and rubbing his fingers. Vertical piano, family version, medium size. Made in the spring of 151st year, the Royal Piano Knight Cruisfaro, priced at 128 gold pieces. The left and right length is 1.5 meters, the front and back thickness is 60 centimeters, and the top height is 1.28 meters. It is a mixture of rock wood and fine steel, and the strings are made of top bowstring materials, taken from the World of Warcraft fur. The body of the piano is purple-black and exudes a faint smell of solid wood. It is not as atmospheric and upscale as a grand piano, but it is a high-end product among the vertical pianos. Compared with the simple pianos that small nobles often buy for more than a dozen gold coins, this one is enough to set off his current identity. Leaning against the wall, moving a stool, Liszt sat directly in front of the piano. His itchy hands couldn't help but press on the keys. Dang! A crisp sound was heard, and one could feel the vibration of the string when the string was plucked. Just this sound, he felt a shock all over his body, as if his soul had been sublimated. The pianist Liszt in the depths of his heart was already ready to make a move. To Alice, to accompany you, and many other famous piano pieces that he had heard before, were ringing around his ears at the same time. His fingers wished they could turn into dancing elves and dance on the keys. However, he didn't. There was too much inspiration, it seemed a little blocked, and he couldn't think of any rhythm, so he touched it, got up and left the study. Today was his birthday, and even Marcus, Russell, and Griffin returned from Black Horse Island. As early as in the morning, Flower Town was immersed in a festive atmosphere, and officials were busy sending warmth to all the people in the territory in the name of the Lord, 2 copper coins per person. In the past, even if there was warmth on festivals, it was at most 1 copper coin. Now that the flower wine is on the market, the Lord is rich again, and with a wave of his hand, he doubled it. May the Lord stay young forever. Lord, ride the dragon as soon as possible. The great Lord will always be blessed by the glory of the night. Praise the Lord. Happy birthday, Lord. Even the serfs who had just arrived at the flower town and had not yet adapted to their new life shouted, Praise, Sir Lord. When the clerks and patrols went door to distribute money, they also announced to everyone, in order to celebrate Sir Lord's birthday, the entire town's poultry and livestock will be given more fodder today. The chickens of every household, the wolf dogs of the kennel, the fruit-stealing monkeys of the fruit-stealing monkey training ground, the cows of the dairy farms, the horses of the castle pasture, the fat pigs of the pig farms, and the scattered dogs and sheep raised by the serfs could all feel the festive atmosphere of today and integrate into the birthday celebration. Mrs. Morrison walked into the sprite worm house and sprinkled a thick layer of jade powder on the sprite worm nest. Lovely little fellows, today is the master's birthday, you should also praise him. There were also maids who brought all kinds of fruits and carefully placed them on the table in the Shellwood building. They didn't know why they were doing this and could only guess that master wanted to feed the shell sea monster. Every servant knew that there was a seashell monster in the castle. When cleaning, they were afraid that the shell would suddenly open and eat them. So even if there were strange sounds in the wooden building sometimes, they pretended not to hear them. It was probably the sound of the explosion when the siren Chi failed to study magic. Sometimes, new magic is easy to fail. Fortunately, it is water magic, so even if it explodes, there is no danger. At most, it splashed a room full of water. Thomas, Tom, Jesse, don't forget to add World of Craft meat to Dosen, Stupid Woman, and the 8 little ones. Liszt told the serving men before the luncheon began. His Blizzard Beast army naturally had to join the celebration and improve their meals. Yes, master. As the sun rose, all the followers arrived. Butler Carter came over and asked, Master, can we start the banquet? Let's begin. Immediately, the guests and the host were seated, and exquisite food was served, exuding a tempting fragrance. But there were only a few bottles of flower wine held by the serving men. A small glass was poured in front of each of them. Liszt smiled, but his tone was serious. I can't delay the normal work of the territory because of my birthday, so 1 cup of flower wine per person at the luncheon is not allowed to drink more. Drinking is a mistake, and the serfs' work arrangements are not over yet, so it is not appropriate to party. Gort looked disappointed. What he loved most was the atmosphere of drinking at the banquet. But the theme of the banquet was Liszt's will. When the flower wine in front of everyone was poured, under the leadership of Gort, the followers raised their glasses and shouted, May the Lord be young forever, and the glory of the night will always be with you. Glory will always belong to you. Glory belongs to me, I am with you. Liszt raised his glass, looked around at the growing number of followers, and drank it in one gulp. The spiciness of the liquor penetrated into the lungs, and instantly raised his lofty sentiments. It was not in vain that he had worked hard for a year. Flower Town, a remote place, finally glowed with vitality. It was very emotional. Wow! Ella suddenly flew over, grabbed the steak on the plate in front of him, and gnawed on it. After 2 bites, she felt it was not delicious, so she threw it back directly. She leaned on the edge of the soup bowl and drank the egg soup. The atmosphere that had just been brewed was completely destroyed by the little fellow. He smiled and did not blame Ella. Today, since he was celebrating with the people and with the creatures, he naturally had to count it in. There was no wine to add to the fun. The banquet was still full of laughter, but it was eaten very quickly. In less than half an hour, all the dishes had been eaten. Wiping his mouth, Liszt did not keep his followers any longer, and directly announced the end of the banquet. Those who should work continue to work. They were not paid every day to be lazy. He left Marcus, Russell, and Griffin waiting for the butler Carter to bring milk tea, and closed the door of the study. He said, 1,000 serfs have been handed over to Consultant Gort for selection, and now 500 have just been selected. When you go back, transport them to Black Horse Island. Yes, my lord. Recently, it has become more and more difficult to buy food. Maybe the supply of bread will decrease. Remember to look for seafood on the beach on Black Horse Island and spend this time. Please rest assured, my lord, we have found 2 beaches with plenty of seafood. I am very relieved that Teacher Marcus is doing things. Liszt smiled. The flower brew has been on the market. At present, it seems that the sales momentum is good. Flower Town's finances will be very abundant. It is time for Black Horse Island to be built. When this group of serfs is completed, I will send another group of officials to assist you. I hope you will take on the heavy burden. Chapter 305. After a nap, Liszt shook the bell and asked the servant to bring a cup of milk tea. Liszt sat in front of the upright piano. His mood had calmed down, and the explosive inspiration had all dissipated, leaving only peace. The piano score of To Alice was placed on the shelf. He was ready to play a song to feel the sound quality of the new piano, and also to cultivate his personal sentiment for a moment. When his fingers touched the keys, the familiar rhythm was immediately awakened, as if there was a driving force in his body. His hands began to play by themselves, and the notes bloomed. A simple and beautiful melody echoed in the study. The thick walls had a good soundproof effect, so that he could immerse himself in his own world and indulge. At the end of the song, there was still an intoxicated expression on his face. A moment later, waking up from the intoxication, he began to recall the previous feeling. Compared with the grand piano of Longtaro Castle, the sound quality is much worse, and it is also incomparable to the grand piano of Tulip Castle. But the upright piano also has its advantages. While reducing the sound quality, it also covers up many technical defects. The grand piano can hit about 14 times in a second, but the upright piano can only hit 7 times in a second. The feeling is not as smooth as the grand piano, and the sound is not as rich as the grand piano. The performance between extreme strength and extreme weakness is not obvious enough. Of course, if you are not a professional, you probably won't be able to hear the difference between the upright piano and the grand piano. Liszt's predecessor was a semi-professional, and he himself seemed to have the talent of a pianist, so he could keenly feel the gap. It was a pity that the Count did not give him a grand piano. Greedy. The cheapest grand piano costs hundreds of gold coins. With this money, I can buy a lot of potions. Although the Count has a big business, he is not the kind of person who spends money indiscriminately. Liszt was soon relieved. Having his own piano made him happy. After taking a sip of milk tea, he changed the music score. It was To Accompany You, which he had composed on the ship. This score was similar to Fur Elise, which was a very simple type. With the performance skills he had inherited from his predecessor and the influence of a good piano tutor, he could at least reach the level of an amateur level 10, which was enough for him to play a simple song. With my name as the Piano King list, playing amateur level 4 or 5 songs is easy. Dang. His fingertips pressed down hard on the piano keys, and the performance began, carrying with it a faint melancholy melody. In an instant, Liszt seemed to have returned to the time when he was admiring the blue sky and white clouds on the voyage. The poignant melody contained longing, striving, yearning, and perseverance. Even though he knew that it was a tragedy, he still marched forward without hesitation. Dang, 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 dang. When the last key fell, Liszt felt like he was about to cry from the beautiful performance. Music could move people's hearts, and the piano, as the king of musical instruments, was particularly charming. At this moment, he finally believed that he had the talent to be a pianist. The king of the piano lived in his heart. Dang. He played it again and again. He didn't stop until he had played With You and To Alice flawlessly. He felt that after the baptism of music, his dusty soul had regained its clarity. He glanced out the window. The setting sun was exceptionally bright. It's time to take the pill. The thick bast paper was spread on the desk, the quill pen was inserted in the ink box, and Liszt took out 2 thorns potions and a flame potion from the gem space. The crystal hourglass on the table was turned upside down. When the sand began to flow down, he immediately took the first thorns potion. The warm magic of chaos brewed and diffused in his body, giving him a feeling of swelling. He opened his eyes, while maintaining the transformation of magic into chi and circulating it in his meridians. He quietly looked at the hourglass. When the hourglass flowed down for 5 minutes, he suddenly opened a flame potion and drank it. The surging fire magic burst in an instant, wrapped in chaos magic, as if some kind of chemical reaction had occurred, creating a larger, more surging magic, crashing into every cell in his limbs. His face was red, his forehead was sweating, and his body had a vague tearing pain. After a full 10 minutes, the pain subsided slightly. He glanced at the hourglass, silently opened the second thorns potion, and drank the potion. The magic of chaos emerged again, covering the damaged body that had been impacted by the flame potion and solidifying the effects of the previous potion. When the body recovered to its best state, the hourglass had also finished half an hour of sand. The sun was about to set. Phew, comfortable. Feeling the total amount of chi that was rising every day, Liszt's mouth was full of smiles, and he began to write today's potion experience in ink and record the data. The time needs to be fine-tuned, the dosage of the flame potion needs to be redistributed, and the total amount of each potion needs to be reduced, so as to achieve the minimum loss and maximum gain. The recording was completed. He took out another piece of thick bast paper, established a coordinate system with all the data according to the x and y axes, drew a curve, and accurately calculated the direction of subsequent fine-tuning. It was more brain-intensive. Just the number of coordinate systems drawn for various comparisons had reached 11. However, the final result obtained by referring to these 11 variables had a very high accuracy rate. He was now close to figuring out the best potion plan that his body could bear. Compared to when he had just become an elite Earth Knight, the total amount of chi had now doubled. He felt that he could fight against 2 elite Earth Knights, which was the strength of a potion-addicted Earth Knight. The combat skill school relied entirely on honing one's skills. As for the combat skill school, they only needed to keep on honing their skills. Even if you honed your skills for 10 days, it was not as good as me taking a potion once. This is probably the so-called, 1 man can defeat 10 men, a person with great strength can defeat 10 people who know martial arts. An elite Earth Knight who takes potions every day can defeat 10 elite Earth Knights who only know fighting skills. What's more, List did not only know how to take potions, he was also honing his fighting skills. He was completely proficient in Fire Surge, and Fire Dragon Drill, and multiple arrows, had also reached great success. Even Marcus could not successfully practice the ultimate meaning of multiple phantom arrows. He could also fully master it. Cultivation talent, potion wealth, hard work and perseverance, he did not lack any. He stood up, put away the thick bast paper, stood in front of the window with his hands behind his back, and looked at the distant burning clouds. How far away am I from becoming a Sky Knight? He did not know. He only knew that he should continue to take potions. Walking out of the study, he saw the maid Little Lily bending over to clean the aisle, her plump buttocks sticking out, as if inviting him to pick more. Hearing the sound of the door opening, Little Lily hurriedly stood up and bowed to List. Master. The girl became more and more slender and elegant. List was in a good mood with a gentle smile on his face. You have worked hard. Ah, master, Little Lily is very happy working in the castle, it's not hard at all, she hurriedly said with a sincere smile on her face. Life in the castle, this time last year, she did not dare to imagine. Chapter 306. There were 10 more maids and 10 more menservants in the castle. 8 maids were responsible for cleaning the castle's periphery. Omera, Lucy, Ropa, Rose, Winna, Grammy, Monica, Bellucci, and 2 kitchen maids, Jessica and Anna. It was worth mentioning that Irene Fourfingers had been promoted, although she still worked in the kitchen. She had worked for the castle for a year, and should have been promoted to an official maid. But she liked the kitchen and was willing to stay in the kitchen. So she became an official kitchen maid, and her salary rose from 1 copper coin a day to 2 copper coins a day. The same salary as Mrs. Abby's 3 kitchen assistants. Of the 10 menservants, 5 were assistant menservants: Isidore, Morris, Harris, Sam, and Alger. The rough and heavy work of the castle was handed over to them. The remaining 5 were handed over to the groom, One-Eyed Barton, who trained them to raise horses, raise dogs, protect the forest, guard the garden, and protect the worm grass. With a total of 40 servants, the castle could no longer accommodate them. So the new menservants and maids were all arranged to live in a corner of the town's civilian residential area, which was specially divided into the castle servants' residential area and separated by walls. In addition, there were 40 trainee girls and boys in the castle. When they grew up, the castle with List's name would be built, and they would directly become qualified servants. Like the development of the town, the training of servants was also an essential part of the nobility's development. Seeing the satisfied smile on Little Lily's face, List was also satisfied. These people were living around him, and being able to bring stability and happiness to the people around him was naturally a very fulfilling thing. Little Lily, go inform Butler Carter and have him bring the piano to the worm room. Yes, master. Little Lily quickly walked downstairs, leaving behind a graceful back, which List watched until she disappeared around the corner of the stairs. He chuckled softly. I wonder if the beautiful body of youth will choose to stay in the castle like Mrs. Morrison and never marry, or at some point decide to marry and have children? Although the menservants and maids were castle servants, they could still get married. It was just that many maids didn't want to choose marriage. Marriage meant having children, and having children meant unemployment. It would be very difficult to return to the castle to work. The male servant didn't mind. His salary was enough to support his wife and child, and with his connections, he could even send his child to work in the castle. Lords usually trust the descendants of the castle elders more. There were also many unmarried male servants. Butler Carter was one of them. List sometimes found it hard to understand what they were thinking when they dedicated their lives to the noble lords. So far, according to the information reported by Butler Carter, there had been no romance between the servants in the castle. After Liszt and Butler Carter had discussed the rules and regulations of the castle, they did not prohibit men and maids from dating. They just did not allow love to affect their work, and even more so, they were not allowed to have sex in the castle. Very soon, Butler Carter led the manservants to move the upright piano into the worm room. In fact, the most suitable room for a piano was the entertainment room, which could be used as a practice room after some modifications. But Liszt didn't want a separate practice room. A practice room without a grand piano would look shabby. He put the piano in the worm room. Playing the piano without an audience was a very lonely thing. There were not only many sprite worms in the worm room, but also the thorny sprite Ella and the siren Achi, who could really understand music. Sirens were called singing demons by more people because of their moving voices. On lazy afternoons, Achi had once attached herself to Liszt's ear and softly hummed a Sapphire Grand Duchy ballad. That nightingale's beautiful voice made Liszt enjoy it so much that he forgot to leave. It was as if he had already entered the world described by the song, half asleep and half awake, not knowing where he was. "Brother, is this the piano?" The siren floated in front of the piano. Her ankles were connected to the sea, and it was the sea that held her in mid-air. A few strands of water obstructed the view of the mysterious area, which made people more imaginative and wanted to explore it. He paused for a moment before turning his eyes to the piano. "This is a vertical piano. If you want to learn, I can teach you how to play the piano." "Well, Achi wants to learn." She nodded quickly, but suddenly hesitated. "Let's not learn first. Achi still has to study magic. There are many magic waiting to be studied. I hope Achi can become a great wizard one day soon." Achi had her own ideas. Liszt did not intend to force it. He just practiced the piano on the side, playing to Alice and with you constantly, to recover the playing skills left behind by his predecessor as soon as possible. Perhaps it was because of his outstanding talent, just as his cultivation of qi was very fast, his proficiency in playing the piano was also very fast. The memory of his fingers was called out by the music. At some point, Achi's singing had sounded softly, as if accompanied by the sound of the piano. "Look, how beautiful this ocean is! How exciting it is! Look, how intoxicating this natural scenery is! Look, the orchard beside the hillside is full of lipstick-like raspberries, everywhere is fragrant, everywhere is full of warmth. But you said goodbye to me, abandoned your lover forever, left your hometown forever. Do you really have the heart not to come back? Please don't abandon me, don't make me suffer any more. Return to the river castle, come back." This is a very popular folk song of the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom. The story describes a territory called River Castle. The workers in the local raspberry garden hope that their loved ones who are far away from home will return to the River Castle. The author is no longer known. Some people say that it was the workers in the raspberry garden whose husbands went to the battlefield and missed them. Some people say that it was a bard who abandoned the heartbroken girl and wrote the poem. Some people say that it was the lord of the River Castle, whose wife ran away with someone else, and wrote the song Return to the River Castle in great pain. The Grand Duchy of Sapphire is a vassal of the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom. Basically, whatever is popular in the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom will eventually be popular here. Return to the River Castle is not surprising. In Achi's singing, Liszt gradually felt that his piano was no longer able to accompany her. The siren's singing should belong to the sea, not to the accompaniment of an amateur pianist in a small room with a vertical piano. However, Liszt was still struggling to maintain it. Even under the pressure of the siren's singing, there was a clear epiphany in his playing skills. He vented his emotions into the piano playing, his fingers connected to his ears, and his body rose and fell with the rhythm. Dang! Dang dang! When the last note was played, Achi's singing also happened to stop. He was in a good mood and his playing skills soared, as if he had become a master. He couldn't help but take Achi's slender fingers and kiss the back of her white and tender hand. He said enthusiastically and gracefully, "This is a wonderful cooperation, Achi." Chapter 307. While Liszt was living a carefree life as a pianist for a few days, Flower Town's carpentry workshop had produced the first batch of ironwood quality furniture. The carpenters worked together to hand-polish the first set of furniture, which was first sent to the castle. There was a desk with drawers, a bedside table with drawers, a unique antique shelf, a bookshelf with engraved patterns, a stool made of brambles, a well-proportioned armchair, a tall and sturdy wine cabinet, and a small and exquisite pen holder. These pieces of furniture were replaced and put in place. Immediately, Liszt's study was decorated in another unprecedented style. Because the temperature had risen, the Fire Dragon air conditioner had been removed, and the study's style was completely unified, without a trace of awkwardness. "Master, I have seen the Count's study. It is magnificent, but when it comes to the exquisite and noble temperament, this study is even more amazing," Butler Carter exclaimed. The study was arranged under his command, which was a bit self-aggrandizing. But Liszt agreed with this statement. "Indeed, my study is not big, but this set of furniture is very coordinated, coupled with the unified ironwood thorn style. The light gray wood tone looks particularly comfortable." The furniture was very satisfactory. But what satisfied him the most was another ironwood Thorn's work, the Prosperity of Thorn's staff. On the 1.3-meter-long staff, there was a purple-black tulip pattern. The best blacksmiths were invited to carefully pour molten iron into each pattern to form a silver-white pattern. Then they concocted colored paint used in carpentry, outlined a purple-black outline around the iron bars, and finally applied a layer of resin similar to varnish. Protect the iron bar pattern from oxidation. So when the Prosperity of Thorn's staff was sent to Liszt, he immediately liked the low-key but luxurious lines everywhere. Black tulip flowers were connected together, and the roots were like thorns with sharp thorns. It was clearly a mix of tulip and thorns. It had to be said that the craftsman may not have innovative thinking, old-fashioned, and did not know what elegant art was. However, the objects that had been polished by their rough hands had a unique craftsmanship that surpassed the heavens. The simple and unadorned details formed a majestic whole. "I like this toast jacket." Liszt walked slowly in the castle hall, leaning on the Prosper of Thorns. It was a little uncoordinated for a young man to walk with a cane, but with the frac habillé and his tall and straight posture, he looked like a noble. Butler Carter sincerely praised, "Master, you have the most elegant temperament of a noble. When I stand beside you, I can feel your nobility at every moment. You are like a floating cloud in the sky, unreachable. You have all the excellence of the Tulip family and the Taro family." "I accept your compliment, Mr. Carter." Liszt handed him the stick. "I am very satisfied with these ironwood thorn products. You can replace all the wooden furniture and supplies in the castle with ironwood thorn products at your discretion." Carter bowed slightly. "As you wish." He admired the ironwood thorn furniture. Liszt began summoning the smoke quest. The furniture products of the carpentry workshop went offline, and the quest was completed. Quest completed. Reward: 3 wild tea trees. Wild tea trees would probably grow on Black Horse Island. Perhaps Marcus and others had already discovered their existence. Immediately, the new quest caught Liszt's attention. Quest: Ironwood thorn furniture is high-end and elegant. The ironwood era has come to Flower Town. It is the result of the wise leadership of the Lord. Why not continue to work hard and quickly push Flower Town into the brick era? Please build a brick factory and produce qualified brick. Reward: an architect who made a mistake. After the carpentry workshop, the smoke quest began to guide Liszt to build a brick factory. He understood that these should be his innermost thoughts, refracted in the form of the smoke quest. The power of fate was really amazing. Now that the smoke quest had been urged, List no longer hesitated. He called Gort. I intend to build a brick kiln to burn bricks to speed up the construction of the territory. It will take some time for you to work hard. Sir, what is a brick kiln and what are bricks? Gort was puzzled. There is pottery in this world, but there is no porcelain. Strictly speaking, ordinary bricks did not exist, but bricks did exist. Using the method of firing pottery to produce bricks could be used to build houses. This was an extravagant method that only great nobles dared to use. Although pottery is not as valuable as jade and crystal, it is not as valuable as metal in the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. But it is still a high-end technology firmly grasped by the nobles. Tulip Castle has a pottery workshop. The quality of the fired pottery is average, but it can already be engraved with patterns. The Tulip family's specialty, Crescent wine, is packed in pottery cans and sold everywhere. The 50 years of fresh flower wine is also made of pottery. The brick kiln is not like the pottery kiln. It has no technical content and a wide selection of materials. As long as the soil is sticky, it can be used to burn brick. Of course, to burn high-quality blue bricks, the technical content is no less than that of pottery. Therefore, List is only going to burn red bricks. Perhaps in the future, the craftsmen who burn bricks will continue to explore the process and will be able to develop blue bricks and even porcelain firing methods on their own. A brick kiln is a kiln that specializes in firing brick. As for bricks, it is to burn soil into hard stone. Gort was surprised. Can soil be burned into stone? How do you think pottery comes from? Pottery was made by firing clay. Some great nobles would use the method of firing pottery to make square-shaped stones, which were called pottery bricks. Pottery bricks require clay to go through multiple processes to be fired. I decided to simply fire ordinary stones, called red brick. He suddenly remembered that whether it is blue or red bricks, they are all caused by iron, fully oxidized to form red bricks, and not fully oxidized to form blue brick. The metal in this world comes from dragons. There is obviously no iron in the soil. He doesn't know what color the bricks will be, maybe yellow or black, anyway, it should not be red. So, sir, how do I burn bricks? I don't know anything about pottery, let alone brick. I will contact Tulip Castle and let you take a group of serfs to visit the pottery workshop and poach a few pottery apprentices. When you come back, build a brick kiln. Instead of firing pottery, directly firing brick. List thought for a moment and said, It doesn't matter if I can learn or poach apprentices, let's leave it to fate. With the existence of the magic dragon, he only needed to prepare the clay and let the dragon burn the clay pressed into brick. After repeated experiments a few times, he should be able to get the right temperature and the right clay raw material. It wasn't like firing pottery or porcelain, so there was no need for him to steal their skills. List believed that he could directly fire bricks by himself. The visit to the pottery workshop was just to let the serfs understand the basic steps of firing brick. List sent away the still confused Gort. He couldn't help but sigh. It seems that I have to do it myself. I have to experiment with how to fire bricks and not let people idle. By the way, the reward of the smoke mission seems to be an architect who made a mistake? The only architect on Coral Island is Mbappe Gravel, a branch of the Gravel family. Is he going to be punished for his mistakes? Suddenly, some inspiration emerged in his mind. Chapter 308. For example, if I wait for Mbappe to make a mistake, then directly bring him to Flower Town? As long as it is not murder, rebellion, rape, or other evil acts, I should be able to protect him. List thought. However, he still had doubts. Coral Island had a well-known architect who was constantly building large buildings for the Tulip family. What kind of mistake could he make to drive Mbappe away? He even maliciously thought that some bad things would happen, but considering that Mbappe was already old, he should not be able to do anything too bad. So, let Harpagon use the flower caravan's spies to pay more attention to Mbape and see what will happen. One hand grasping the brick factory, the other hand waiting for mistakes. Liszt quickly arranged it. He himself also restrained the degenerate life of the past few days and began to work hard. Now he had several research topics in his hands: how to compile the chronicle history book, Dragons Fighting in the Wild, how to scientifically take magic potions, and the analysis of the nature of rubber, as well as the research on the technology of fire dragon baking brick. The analysis of the nature of rubber. He wrote more than a dozen sheets of thick bast paper. Judging from all aspects, the new type of rubber produced by the rubber tree, except for the softness and elasticity of the rubber on Earth, was the perfect adhesive in other aspects: light, strong, quick-setting, fire-resistant, cold-resistant, waterproof, insect-resistant, non-toxic, tasteless, not easy to deform, watertight and airtight. The buckets made of rubber were surprisingly effective, and there was no need to worry about leakage due to poor craftsmanship. Liszt also used magic to attack the rubber-bonded items and found a very surprising fact. The rubber did not respond to magic. It only withstood physical attacks from magic and chi attack. The crazy chi flames of the move, Great Fire Wave, caused damage to the rubber-bonded broken shields, which was evenly distributed, and did not cause greater damage to the rubber-bonded parts. In other words, rubber can be an excellent material for repairing weapons. I can recycle some damaged weapons on the battlefield, and then repair them with rubber. They should be able to restore the quality of the weapons by 90%. After discovering this secret, Liszt set rubber as a strategic material on the same level as the black blood horse. Recently, he began to experiment with rubber additives. That is, using rubber as an additive to experiment with various physical effects. First, there was water. Liquid rubber could be dissolved in water. After stirring, it would become a turbid white liquid, rubber water. The rubber water would not condense, but after half an hour, it would gradually clear and precipitate a layer of solid rubber at the bottom of the basin. He then experimented with adding sand to the rubber water, or in other words, mixing the sand with the rubber water. A miraculous result soon appeared in front of him. A large clump of sand solidified. It was like a piece of rock that had solidified into a solid block. Even if you used a hammer to hit it hard, you would not be able to smash it. Its hardness was almost the same as the granite used to build the castle. Its effect was far better than the cement blocks that had been solidified. So, just like that, I got the new lightweight and powerful quick-setting cement that I've been dreaming of? The follow-up experiments had yet to begin. But he had already thought about what would happen if he used rubber water to mix metal, gravel, wood chips, soil, and so on. Perhaps the era of reinforced concrete had arrived before the era of brick. The only drawback was that the output of rubber was too low and could not be consumed as casually as cement. It was imperative to expand the scale of rubber tree plantation. For now, he put aside the rubber water experiment and began to prepare for the fire dragon brick baking experiment. He ordered the serfs to collect soil from different places in the flower town. They were the yellow soil by the seaside, the red sand by the river, the brown soil in the wasteland, and the black slag in the Thorns Ridge area. After mixing the soil with water, he began to knead it into clay bricks, which were then given to the small magic fire dragon to be fired. Unlike ordinary furnace fires, the small magic fire dragon could be directly calcined from the inside. Therefore, the speed at which the bricks were fired was remarkable. Half an hour later, the bricks had been fired into shape. After taking out the bricks, Liszt first tried to cool them down by splashing water on them. Then, the black slag bricks of the Thorns Ridge directly shattered with a few cracking sounds. The red sand bricks by the river, although not broken, showed a few cracks. In the face of this situation, Liszt did not directly announce the failure of the black slag and red sand brick. He continued with the second furnace. This time, he adopted the natural cooling method. Of the 4 types of bricks that had cooled, the yellow soil bricks from the seaside were somewhat distorted in shape. The black slag bricks of the Thorns Ridge were not broken, but they were full of cracks and broke with a knock. He tested the hardness of the other 3 types of bricks, and found that the red sand bricks were not good either. They broke with a knock. The brown soil in the wasteland performed the best. Its shape could basically guarantee the shape of a brick, and its hardness could almost reach the hardness of an ordinary stone. In that case, brown soil should be the main raw material for firing brick. However, I still have to experiment with the firing of the mixed soil. He fumbled for 2 days in a row. He finally determined that the mixed soil mixed with 4/5 of brown soil and 1/5 of yellow soil had a very good viscosity. It could be used as the clay for firing brick. The fired bricks were grayish-brown in color and slightly less hard than stone. However, the weight was also a bit lighter. Because the small magic fire dragon was fired from the inside out, the bricks could be molded into a variety of shape. Not only could they be fired into bricks, but they could also be fired into tiles, and even stone slabs and culvert. With the raw materials settled, the next step was how to build the brick kiln. He could not remember what a brick kiln for red bricks looked like, nor was he clear about its working principle, but it was nothing more than using fire. The brick kilns on earth burned coal. He directly burned the small magic fire dragon, so the structure and shape of the brick kiln should be redesigned. Once the small magic fire dragon is released, it will be difficult to take it back. After the bricks are fired, it will not be easy to take them out of the kiln. Maybe I will have to use stonemasons to build a stone cart that can be pushed. He already had the general shape of the new brick kiln in his mind. A single kiln could be designed to be the size of a house, and then several rows of kilns would be distributed. The small magic fire dragon would be placed in the kiln, and a stone cart that could be pushed back and forth would be designed at the bottom of the small fire dragon's activity area. After filling the kiln with bricks, the serfs would push the stone cart into the kiln. When the bricks were fired, the stone cart would be pulled out, and after cooling it with water, the bricks would be unloaded and the bricks would be restacked. Such a cycle was simple and fast. The stone cart would need to be large. Fortunately, I have rubber water, otherwise I would not be able to build a qualified stone cart. Without iron, industrial development is seriously limited. With enough iron, it would be more convenient and fast to weld iron carts directly. Unfortunately, there was no iron, so he could only use stones instead. His thoughts were all sorted out. The design drawings were also drawn. Chapter 309. This chapter is Bitter Tree Reward Added. When Marcus returned by boat again, List took Gort, who had finished his inspection of the pottery workshop, and had a secret discussion with Marcus. This is the brick factory I designed. Take a look. Can you understand it? The drawings of the Fire Dragon brick factory are still vivid. List now designs more pictures and is no longer so abstract. However, Gort and Marcus still didn't understand the drawings. They didn't know the secret of the fire dragon's magic, so it was difficult to understand a kiln that didn't burn fuel. List just explained, you can think of it as a magic array that condenses fire magic. He drew a circle in the blank space of the kiln with his hand. Here, this is the effective range of the magic array. The stone wheel will push the bricks to this position, and the fire magic will begin to calcine the brick. In short, build a kiln on Black Horse Island according to the drawings and wait for me to arrange the magic array. Yes, my lord. After talking about the brick factory, List suddenly asked, Teacher Marcus, did you find any special trees when you transplanted the rubber trees on the island? He wanted to ask about the 3 wild tea trees. Special trees? Marcus didn't understand. My lord, some of the trees on the island really can't be identified, but there doesn't seem to be anything special about them. When you go back, mark all the trees that can't be identified, and I will check them myself. Since there are such magical trees as rubber trees on the island, maybe there are other equally magical trees. In addition, I have studied the nature of the rubber produced by rubber trees. He shared the rubber quality notes he had sorted out. The importance of rubber can be said to have surpassed the magic potion. It's really amazing. Gort flipped through the contents of the notes, marveled, and then said, "Oh my God, the effect of building a house is as magical as glutinous rice." The glutinous rice juice was the most important gel material for castle construction. A wall poured with glutinous rice juice can last for hundreds of years. An aristocratic castle that is not poured with glutinous rice juice is an inferior castle. In particular, the glutinous rice juice in this world had the property of resisting magic, so the damage that magic and battle aura could cause to the city walls would be much smaller. The properties and effects of rubber water were indeed very similar to glutinous rice. Marcus also exclaimed, "At first, I didn't think that it would have any use. Now that I look at it again, it is indeed, as you expected, a precious resource. Knight, I know you are the son of glory. Otherwise, how could there be so many magical treasures born in Flower Town and Black Horse Island?" Gort quickly flattered. Lys smiled. It was not because he was a son of glory, but because his smoke mission affected the power of fate. These rubber trees, magic herbs, fast-growing iron thorns, and so on all grew naturally. The real culprit should be this mysterious world. Although these plants and animals were very similar to the animals and plants on Earth, they were extraordinary in many other aspects. The influence of magic power on this world was reflected in all aspects. Who could guarantee what kind of sparks would be produced when those seemingly familiar things were combined with magic power? The glutinous rice that could build a city was definitely not ordinary glutinous rice. The black tea tree that made the milk tea was definitely not an ordinary tea tree. The rubber that had the advantages of cement and 502 glue was naturally not ordinary rubber. Just as Liszt was busy with the brickyard, Harpagon of the flower caravan sent back a piece of news that made his heart skip a beat. Jemiah rammed earth, an apprentice of the architect Mbappe, who had been studying under him for many years, was expelled from his construction team and sent to prison because of adultery with Mbappe's daughter-in-law. If nothing unexpected happened with Mbappe's power, he would definitely bribe the prison officials to kill Jemiah, if he wanted to kill Jemiah. Adultery with a teacher's daughter-in-law, his character is really bad, but he has studied architecture with Mbappe for many years and his level is enough to graduate. The so-called reward for the smoke mission should be Jemiah rammed earth. Liszt thought about it and asked the Earth Knight, Randy Kettle, to go to Tulip Castle. He ordered, "Contact Mr. Frank and ask him to help me take a person from the prison, Jemiah rammed earth. Don't be stingy if you need to spend anything, just charge it to the castle." With his current working relationship with Levis, and trusting Frank to do something for him couldn't be any easier. Not to mention it was just to take away a prisoner. No matter how high the status of the architect Mbappe was, he was just a civilian. On Coral Island, the Tulip family was the law. If he wanted to protect Jemiah, even 10 Mbappes couldn't stop him. However, I still have to give face to Mbappe. Tell Frank to let the prison teach Jemiah a good lesson, but don't kill him, and then send him to Flower Town. Yes, sir. Randy took the order and left. It only took a day and a half for Jemiah rammed earth, whose buttocks were almost split into 4 pieces, to be pulled by a carriage to Flower Town. Jemiah, you should have died in prison. Remember, it was our Lord, the Lord of Flower Town, Baron Liszt, who saved you. The rest, you should understand what to do. Randy said lightly. Jemiah resisted the pain and replied weakly, Jemiah knows, Jemiah will not dare to make any more mistakes and will work hard for the Lord in the future. My Lord appreciates your architectural skills. From now on, you can work in Flower Town and your family will be sent over. Yes, Jemiah will work hard. Thank you, Lord, for saving my life. He was sent to recuperate. Liszt did not see him immediately. He was just an architect apprentice. Even if he reached the level of an architect, he was not worth much attention. He directly called out the smoke mission. Sure enough, after the reward was obtained in advance, the mission has changed. The mission has changed. Mission. The flower travels between Flower Town and Black Horse Island, rain or shine, but navigation is risky, especially at night. Without the illumination of a lighthouse, you will get lost. Please build a lighthouse on Black Horse Island. Reward: a magic book. After reading the content of the mission, Liszt suddenly found that he really had to pay attention to Jemiah. The lighthouse is obviously a relatively high-end building. The stonemasons and carpenters of Flower Town can't build a lighthouse. When Jemiah's injuries are almost healed, have him come to see me. The reward for the mission is a magic book, which is quite interesting. The last reward was related to books. It was information about the invisible dragon, as well as the magic eyes chi secret skill. In that case, this magic book is a reward for a powerful magic, and it's given to a chi? No one in the territory knows magic, only the siren A Chi, who is working hard to study water magic. The magic book reward can only be related to her. Chapter 310. There were three sources for Liszt's magic books. One was that the flower caravan bought them from the bookstore in Coral City every time, the other was from Elksun, and the third was from the Tulip Castle caravan to buy books from other places. There was a high probability that the reward of the task would come from one of these three sources. Thinking about it this way, he felt a little indignant. Even without this task, the magic books would still be in his hand. It felt like taking off his pants and farting. It was superfluous. Anyway, the task had to be done. Coral City, a small town around. In a dilapidated cabin in the woods, Elksun Truth shrouded himself in a cloak and stood at the door of the cabin. With a creak, the door opened. An old woman with dark green hair opened the door. She was also wearing a magic cloak, but it was dirty and had obviously not been washed for a long time. "You're here, Elksun." "Yes, Sir Mylisai." Elksun frowned quietly and tried to hold his breath. The smell in the room was too strange. "Why didn't your magic apprentice open the door? Why bother you to open the door? Clumsy waste, I have turned him into a pile of flower fertilizer," Mylisai Truth said in a flat tone, telling of the murder that happened in private. Elksun twitched the corner of his mouth, wanting to laugh but unable to. He could only change the subject. "Did your friend bring you new magic books?" Mylisai smiled coldly. "Of course I did. What about you, Elksun? Are you ready for the gold coins you cheated from the little white-faced lord?" "I didn't cheat, Baron Liszt, I was just doing business." "Oh, I noticed that you've been visiting the Inga Tavern more often recently than you did last year." Mylisai licked his dry, chapped lips, his eyes flashing. "Young people should be more restrained. Don't indulge yourself after making money. The path of truth needs to be explored alone." "Thank you for your advice, Sir Mylisai. If there is nothing else, I want to get the magic books first. I have some things to deal with. Come with me." After entering the hut, Mylisai pointed at a wooden box and said, "This is the new batch of magic books. There are no duplicates. There are 51 books in total. I'll charge you 3 gold coins. Last time, a box of magic books only cost 2 gold coins. The price has risen." Mylisai smiled sinisterly. "Anyway, you can cheat more money from the pretty boy lord. Why do you care about a small business that only costs 1 or 2 gold coins? Sir Mylisai, please don't spread rumors for no reason. When I do business with Baron Liszt, I always mark the price clearly. I've never hidden or deducted anything." "Hee, use your lies to deceive Spectre. 3 gold coins, not 1 less. You're making things difficult for me. 51 magic books cost 3 gold coins. I can't afford such a price." Although he bargained for a while, in the end, Elksun reluctantly paid 3 gold coins. He asked one of the magic apprentices to take the box away and left the cabin in the middle of the forest that was emitting a strange smell. On the way back, the magic apprentice asked curiously, "Teacher, there's a strange smell in my Lisai's house. She looks very sloppy." Not every sorcerer is as refined as my teacher, and not every magic apprentice is as lucky as you to have a peace-loving teacher. On average, Sir Mylisai has a new magic apprentice every month. There are always silly teenagers who think that magic is a noble existence. Ah, is Mylisai so harsh to the magic apprentices that he drives one away every month? Drives away? Elksun laughed as if he had heard a joke. "Ha ha, Hans, you should learn to talk less, or you will expose your serious ignorance." But he didn't continue to explain. Only the puzzled teenager was left, struggling to hold the box and follow behind him. Back in his residence, Elksun sent Hans to meditate and began to sort out the books in the box. Mylisai sold him books for 3 gold coins, which was a bit cruel, but he could reorganize the books and separate the valuable ones. Queen's Tauren conjecture? Well, in Mylisai's opinion, this monster story, which has no use at all, should sell for a good price. Baron List likes this kind of unconstrained imagination. He picked out the book and put it aside. Then he picked out a few more, such as Field Research on the Giant Footprint of Kamchatka, Randolph Truth's Travels in the Grand Duchy of Brass, Analysis of the Magic Principle of Turning Frogs into Sheep, and so on. Finally, he turned to a book called The Secrets of Sea Snakes and carefully read a few pages. It shouldn't sell for a good price. It's all about the habits of sea monsters. Baron List won't like this kind of boring note. So he threw the book back into the box. The books in the box were sold at cost, no bargaining. Looking at the pile of organized books, Link laughed. These should be able to sell for 5 or 6 gold-rimmed coins. But next time, I'll have to contact a new sorcerer to buy these books. Mylisai, that old witch, is too greedy. Unfortunately, it's very difficult to get hold of the spellcasting methods that I want. Eat the marrow and know the taste. Selling magic is something that is despised by the magic world. Once it is done, it can't be stopped. Especially after receiving the payment for the flower wine a while ago, List directly paid 20 gold coins for the rock grenade casting plan. Elksun quickly fell in love with the pleasure of making a net profit of 20 gold coins. Next, I will expand my contacts and contact the mages of the outer island. List doesn't care about Elksun's business methods. Of course, he knows that Elksun should make a lot of money from buying magic books and refining magic potions, but that's the way technology is monopolized. If you hire any mage to work, you have to pay enough technical fees. Unless he trains a mage himself, perhaps the future siren He can help refine magic potions, but she can't do it now. He can only hire people with money. The income from the second batch of flower wine was quickly distributed, a total of 200 gold coins. The nobles of Coral Island quickly accepted the taste of the flower wine. The sale of gin has been banned on Coral Island. With enough gold coins, they don't care about the gold coins given to Elksun. They are in a good mood every day. The ironwood thorn products of the carpentry workshop have also gradually opened up to the market. The quality of ironwood is only slightly higher than the price of general wood product. It is quickly favored by the small nobles and orders continue to pour in. Hangers, rocking chairs, drawers, these 3 new types of families are also very popular and have received a lot of orders. All the carpenters in the town are so busy that they have to have their meals delivered. They get up from dawn to dusk to make all kinds of wood products and sell them to all parts of Coral Island through caravans. Now Flower Town is thriving, Charles, you should feel it. Zambrata, who serves as the diplomat of Flower Town, is receiving a noble Thunder Attribute Elite Earth Knight. Charles Trapp, who has the title of Lord Knight. Chapter 311. There was such a group of aristocrats. They followed their lord into battle, but the lord died on the battlefield. The fief lacked an heir and was directly incorporated by the superior lord. However, the superior lord refused to recognize the territorial rights of the followers of the dead lord, so their fief was deprived, leaving only a useless aristocratic title. There was also such a group of liars. They were best at forging their aristocratic identities, such as a bankrupt lord knight, a follower of a baron whose lord had died, or a viscount whose fief had been seized. In short, they had so-called aristocratic identities and fabricated all kinds of destitute background. The country was vast and the transportation was backward. It was difficult for ordinary aristocrats to verify their identities when they encountered these liars. Therefore, when they treated these aristocrats, their attitude was to treat them politely, but they would never really recognize the other party's aristocratic identity. Charles Trapp was one of these two kinds of aristocrat. He was originally a follower of the Count of Faroland, but the Count of Faroland died on the battlefield of the Kingdom of Eagle 7 years ago, leaving no heir to inherit the title. His lord, Marquis Wallace Pineapple, took back the fief according to the law of the Grand Duchy. He refused to recognize the followers of the Count of Faroland as having legal rights to the fief. Marquis Wallace believed that it was his followers who did not protect him well that led to the death of the Count of Faroland. Therefore, all the fief was deprived. Charles was deprived of his fief, so he resented Marquis Wallace for being too greedy. He left the Pineapple family's fief, Deep Throat Island, and wandered to Coral Island. Lee William Tulip did not believe Charles's words. He was not familiar with Faroland and did not know how many followers he had. Therefore, Charles was reduced to a marginal person on Coral Island. He could go to the battlefield and be incorporated into the mixed orders of chivalry, but even if he fought hard, he still could not get much credit. The Count did not care about such an elite Earth Knight. His elite orders of chivalry were all elite Earth Knight. The two Viscounts were also reluctant to share credit with a foreign knight, not to mention that he might be a liar. So Charles wasted 7 years without any result. They began to cast their gazes towards the Flower Town. At first, he wrote a letter to Gort to reminisce about their old friendship. After all, they were both nobles who had fallen from grace. Now he simply came to Flower Town in person and revealed his thoughts. Liszt did not receive him, but arranged for Zambrata to receive him. The Lord of Flower Town was also afraid. If the other party was really a liar, his reputation would be ruined. He had to be careful when dealing with a knight of unknown origins. In his previous life, Liszt had heard of many senior officials being deceived by swindlers and losing face all the way to their grandmother's house. He asked Zambrata to stay for the dinner. He asked about the reception of Charles. "What do you think of Charles?" "Sir, based on my understanding of Charles, he is indeed very strong, but speaking of his identity, many powerful Earth Knight like to take shortcut. If they can pretend to be an aristocrat and get glory, why bother to fight on the battlefield? You know, not every elite Earth Knight can obtain aristocratic identity. I need some more objective information," Liszt said. Zambrata was indeed knowledgeable and witty. However, he had a bad habit. He liked to talk big but didn't get involved in practical matters. He was able to be pragmatic, but not practical. Zambrata coughed and replied, "I heard that he fought hard on the battlefield a few years ago, but in the past 2 years, his performance began to be mediocre. He usually wanted to integrate into the aristocratic circle, but he always tried too hard and acted too deliberately. When I received him today, I could feel that he was too anxious." "Too anxious?" "Yes, the conversation was always about you, Sir Lord. It made me feel that his purpose was too strong, and he always wanted to cover it up." Zambrata tried to make his words sound real. "We can all see his purpose in coming to Flower Town, but he feels that we can't see it clearly. Vulgarly speaking, it was probably the mentality of being a whore and still wanting to have a chastity." Liszt understood this. "Then you continue to receive him?" Don't promise anything. Let him see what he needs to do. I will see him again. First, tear down the other's chastity. Then they can meet each other honestly, talk about following, and accept the interests involved in following. In the next few days, Liszt became very busy because he went to Black Dragon Island. The inventor's inspiration burst forth, causing him to order others to carry Jormaya on a stretcher and personally supervise the construction of the kiln of the Fire Dragon brick factory. I brought you here, in addition to instructing the stonemasons to build the brick factory kiln. I hope you can understand the help of rubber water for construction, he said to Jormaya. Then he walked into a simply built kiln, took out the Fire Dragon jar containing the Fire Dragon magic, and released the Fire Dragon magic. After several adjustments, the range of activity of the magic Fire Dragon was successfully fixed in the calcining space of the kiln. Then he instructed the stonemasons to bond a stone wheel with rubber water and experiment with the effect of pushing and pulling. He personally led people to find suitable brown soil and yellow soil from Black Horse Island and mixed them into clay raw materials. The wooden brick mold was filled with stirred clay and pressed down with a wooden plank to form a rectangular brick. Hundreds of serfs, perhaps a little stupid, but absolutely unconditionally obey orders. What they are told to do, without asking why, they will do it directly. So the speed is very fast. A cart of bricks has been stacked. 1, 2, 3. Shouting slogans, the serfs pushed the stone wheel into the kiln, and the calcining began. This takes some time. Liszt went to the other side, where Jormaya was watching the serfs mix the sand and stones on the beach with rubber water, and then pile them into a new brick factory kiln. What do you see? My lord, rubber water is incredible. It is faster than glutinous rice juice, which takes at least a day to solidify and a week to completely solidify. You asked me to build the lighthouse. I originally expected it to take a month to complete, but now it seems that it may only take a few days. Jormaya exclaimed. The lighthouse is not easy to build, because first of all it has to be in a relatively steep and high place, usually on some cliffs and reef. Not only does it need to carry materials, but it is also very dangerous. When the stones are piled up, it takes a long time to solidify. It is even more difficult to build a large lighthouse. But with the quick solidifying effect of rubber water, the construction time will be greatly shortened, and it is not difficult to build a lighthouse in a short period of time by crazy accumulation of manpower and material resources. Liszt did not intend to build a large lighthouse. He only intended to build a small 10-meter-high lighthouse on the rocky beach near Black Horse Port. After installing a crystal lamp, the range can reach 2 or 3 kilometers. In the future, when conditions are met, another small lighthouse will be built on the reef on the channel, and a small lighthouse will also be built in the Port of Flowers. In this way, the flowers will no longer have any risk of getting lost. While talking, Chapter 3:12. Water was poured to cool it. Smoke rose from the gray-brown brick. A serf wearing gloves took a few pieces and handed them to Liszt, Gort, and Marcus. Test the hardness. Clang clang. With 2 strikes of the hammer, the bricks were smashed. The hardness is average, the degree of firing is not enough, try another furnace. Liszt said calmly. This furnace of bricks obviously did not reach the quality of his experiment. The new furnace took 10 minutes to burn, and it took a full half an hour to finish. After the water was poured to cool, the gray-brown bricks had reached the standard hardness, which was not much worse than granite. Jormaya felt the hardness and weight of the bricks on the stretcher and could not help but praise again. Sir, with bricks of the same shape, it will be very convenient to build any building. Compared to those fragile pottery, the bricks are exactly as hard as stone. It's good that it's easy to use. Then the rest of the brick factory kiln will be handed over to you to design. When the construction of the brick factory is completed, you will immediately start building the lighthouse. If Jormaya had not been brought in advance, he would have produced qualified bricks at this time and completed the task. Jemiah would have entered his vision. However, the smoke task has changed. Jemiah arrived early and was preparing to build the lighthouse, which shortened the time of the task. List turned around and asked Marcus, "Teacher Marcus, has the location of the lighthouse been chosen? I have done a field survey with Captain Costo and determined that it should be built 1 mile west of Black Horse Port. The terrain there is very high, the angle of view is very good, and it can be seen clearly from the ship. Moreover, the surrounding rocky beach does not hinder walking, and it is very convenient to transport building materials. Then build the lighthouse in this location. Consultant Gort, you continue to be responsible for the construction of the brick factory." "As you wish, sir." After handing over the task of construction supervision to Gort, List took Marcus, Russell, and Griffin, rode on his mount, Lightning, and began another task on this trip to Black Horse Island to find wild tea trees. There were not many trees on the island. Most of them were rubber trees. Therefore, there were very few trees that could not be identified. In just one day, List found the reward of the smoke mission before that, 3 wild tea trees. These 3 wild tea trees were right next to each other, growing on the northern slope of the ice-grass hill. They could be seen at a glance. It belonged to the shrub type of tea tree. It wasn't very tall, only about 2 meters tall. The branches were numerous and messy, unlike the neatly planted tea trees. It was now March, and the tender leaves of the wild tea tree had just sprouted not long ago. It was slightly different from the tender shoots of the tea tree in List's memory. The edges were not too obvious, and the buds were not obvious. It couldn't compare to the domesticated tea tree. When picking tea, especially spring tea, one could pick a single bud, a single leaf, or a single bud with 2 leaves. A single sprout was a bud that had just sprouted and had yet to form a tender leaf. 1 sprout and 1 leaf meant that 1 bud had grown into a tender leaf. 1 sprout and 2 leaves meant that 2 buds had grown into tender leaves. Some people liked to drink single sprouts. Normally, only 30 to 40,000 sprouts could produce 1 caddy of single sprouts. The single sprouts were not fully developed, so they didn't taste fresh enough and would be a little bitter. Not to mention, they weren't resistant to soaking. But people liked the fragrance and mellow taste of the single sprouts, as well as the noble atmosphere. 1 leaf and 2 leaves were more common. They were well developed, had sufficient amino acids and vitamins, and had sufficient fragrance. It was just that when brewed, it didn't have the pleasing feeling of standing up like a needle, like the single sprouts. The thick tea flavor also lacked a hint of elegance. High-grade Longjing tea, for example, was made by gathering single sprouts and frying them. List didn't understand the above. Before he transmigrated, he was just an ordinary working-class person who drank more beverages than tea. His understanding of tea leaves was obtained from the ubiquitous advertisements on video website. Things like big leaf tea and small leaf tea, how many processes there were, and how old experts personally supervised the production. If I'm not wrong, these 3 trees should be called tea trees. List stood in front of the wild tea trees and said lightly. Marcus asked curiously, "Black tea tree?" "Sir, the black tea tree doesn't look like this. Its leaves are slightly red and round, and they can even bear fruit. This is a green tea tree." List said, "I've read in a magic book that the green tea tree is very different from the black tea tree. Its buds can be picked, fried, and brewed directly into tea for drinking, which is very good for the body." Green tea tree? Marcus chewed on the name of the tree and said nothing more. He knew that he was not as knowledgeable as List. The young lord was well-read and knew a lot of things. The rubber tree was the best example. If it wasn't for the wisdom of the Lord, they would have missed the extremely important rubber. Without any delay, List directly ordered a group of female serfs to collect the buds of 3 green tea trees. Whether it was a single bud with 1 leaf, a single bud with 2 leaves, or a single bud with 3 or 4 leaves. Let's collect it first. Of course, according to junior high school biology knowledge, he knew that tea should be collected from the top of the tea tree. Because plants have an apical advantage, the top bud grows first and inhibits the growth of the side buds. After picking the top bud, the side buds of the tea tree will grow without affecting the growth of the tea tree. Today, there are nearly 1,500 serfs working on Black Horse Island. There are also a lot of female serfs. Griffin called 20 and brought a few ladders to pick the top buds of the green tea tree. Looking at the serfs at work, List suddenly thought of a legend of tea picking, lip tea. It was said that there was a kind of tea that was picked by virgins with their own mouths, and the tea stained with virgin saliva was particularly fragrant. After frying, it was put into the arms of virgins. Finally, the new tea that came out of the oven was fragrant, and had the unique body fragrance of virgins. It was called lip tea. Legends were not credible, at least List did not believe it. If the virgin who picked the tea looked like Sister Xiaofeng, he believed that no one would be willing to drink that kind of lip tea. In 2 hours, the serfs had picked most of the top bud. There was not much in total, about 2 pounds. With 2 pounds of tender leaves and shoots, List was ready to return to Flower Town by boat. Gort and Marcus were in charge of the work on Black Horse Island, so there would be no problems. Just before leaving, Gort looked at him eagerly. "Sir, Freya has been pregnant for 9 months and will give birth at any time, but I can't be with her." "Don't worry, when the lighthouse construction is completed, you can come back." Consultant Gort, Flower Town is important, but the construction of Black Horse Island's port town is equally important. You need to maintain it for a while. After all, teacher Marcus lacks experience. At this point, Gort could only cheer up. "Sir, please rest assured that Gort will carefully plan the development of the port town." List comforted Gort. The Flowers set sail, braving the wind and waves in the blue sky and blue sea. Chapter 3:13. 1 gin of fresh tea was fried into 2 taels of dry tea. Mrs. Abbey, in accordance with List's requirements, repeatedly stir-fried the tea leaves with her palms over a small fire. After about an hour of stir-frying, the tea leaves had curled and dried up. Because he didn't know what temperature was right and how to fry it, List put the tea leaves into the gem space to keep them fresh. He only took out 1 gin of fresh tea for the experiment. The fried tea leaves were spread out to cool, and the next day, List tried to make a cup. When he watched the curled and dried tea leaves slowly stretch out in the crystal cup as if they were alive, and the color of the tea gradually turned pale yellow and green, he only felt that success was beckoning. Sure enough, when the tea cooled a little, he immediately began to taste it. After entering the mouth, the familiar taste of tea instantly exploded on the taste buds of the tongue. His heart flashed, and his eyes were even a little astringent. "Tea, I drank it! This is really tea. Although it is a little bitter and the quality is not very good, it is indeed tea." 2 taels of dry tea can make about 10 cups of tea. There is still 1 gin of fresh tea in the gem space, which can be fried into a total of 4 taels of dry tea, which is equivalent to about 20 cups of tea. 1 cup a day, I can only drink it for 20 days. After 3 months, I should be able to pick the summer tea, another 20 cups. It seems that I can pick it again in autumn, another 20 cups. That is to say, I can drink 60 cups of tea a year. List thought about it and felt that it could not be calculated like this. The tea leaves have been drunk, what should he do in the future? My goal should be to cultivate tea trees, but who can tell me how to grow tea trees? Should I rely on cuttings? Or direct seed planting? He didn't know much about it. In his memory, he didn't seem to have heard of tea blooming and bearing fruit. Forget it, let's wait and see if the tea leaves will bloom and bear fruit. If they can bloom and collect the seeds, we will start sowing next year. If not, we will use cuttings to plant green tea trees next year. Tasting the pure tea. List has decided to breed tea trees on Black Horse Island. Even if he does not promote tea culture, He should plant a tea garden and make tea for himself. A cup of tea was drunk. He didn't know if it was an illusion, but he clearly felt that his body seemed to have relaxed a little. The grease of the big meat dishes seemed to have been dissolved by the tea. During the banquet, he had a good appetite and ate an extra piece of World of Warcraft meat. It was left hanging for a few days. Through Zambrata, the Lord Knight knew that he had come to Flower Town. He was anxious but reserved at the beginning, then only irritated, and now full of disappointment. List decided to meet Charles Pitfall. In any case, on the Coral Island, the aristocrats still recognized him as a Chevalier Knight, and etiquette should not be lacking. "Sir Charles, how do you feel after staying in Flower Town for a few days?" List wore the standard smile of an aristocrat as he rocked the rocking chair under the apple tree that had just sprouted and was about to bloom. Today's weather was not bad, it was quite sunny and windy. Charles sat upright on a stool. List's reception made his disappointed heart restless again. "Sir Baron, Flower Town has a great future. Many people say so, including my father and my grandfather, Marquis Merlin." List seemed very casual, not deliberately showing off. "When I first came to Flower Town, it was like many small towns without a lord, living in hunger and cold. It was your arrival that brought a happy life to the civilians of Flower Town." Charles sincerely praised. A person's destiny, of course, depends on their own struggle, but also the historical process. "Sorry, you may not know much about history." List picked up the glass of milk and motioned to Charles to drink milk. He took a sip to moisten his throat. He continued, "The development of Flower Town cannot be separated from my leadership, but it also cannot be separated from the support of Tulip Castle. Slave trade, seafood, flower soap, flower wine. The market is big, but you have to integrate into it to see the wider world. So, Sir Charles, what do you see?" Charles did not understand what List was talking about for a while. In fact, he was just being mysterious. List did not give him time to think and said directly, "I heard that you are a veteran elite Earth Knight, with superb fighting skills and powerful strength. Recently, my talent has also begun to show, and I have defeated more than one elite Earth Knight. Why not practice a sword fight?" Since Sir Baron is interested, Charles is willing to accompany Sir Baron to practice sword fighting. "Don't hold back, I can defeat the elite Earth Knight, this is not a joke." List pulled out a long steel sword and walked to the grassland. Now that he is thinking about going to the battlefield, he will never miss the opportunity to fight against the elite Earth Knight. Charles, who was about 40 years old, took the long steel sword handed by the servant, and his temperament suddenly changed. There is a vague demeanor of a strong man, more imposing than Marcus. The two men, one with fire attribute and the other with thunder attribute, are ready to fight. Great fire wave. The first move was a fierce attack. This was List's style. A random punch could kill an old master. No matter how exquisite one's Do skills were, one only needed to rely on the abundant Do Chi that came from taking potions to attack. Charles's sword flashed with lightning, quickly breaking through the sky full of flame fighting energy, and directly hit List's head. Steady, accurate, and fierce. With this move alone, List dared to conclude that Charles is stronger than Marcus and Paris without transformation. However, this level alone is not enough to scare List. His blood was even more boiling, and his fighting energy exploded. He wanted to burst out all at once, fire dragon sweep. Dang! The long swords collided, and sparks flew everywhere. There are not only flame sparks but also electric sparks. List's body wrapped in fire attribute fighting energy was still hit by a little thunder attribute fighting energy. He felt a slight numbness in the part that was hit. It is not to the extent that it affects the action. Fire Dragon Roll. Another huge wave of fighting energy burst out. List's momentum is even fiercer, pressing down on Charles. The seemingly rough fighting technique attack method is meticulous in its roughness. He always pays attention to Charles's counterattack. He mixed in the transformation of the real and the false, and from time to time a subtle sneak attack. Such a fierce fighting style only caught Charles unprepared, and he gradually lost his physical strength. He wanted to fight back, but he was surrounded by flames and did not know how to fight back. Although his defense was still tight, he felt extremely depressed. He felt that he is not facing an Earth Knight, but a domineering Sky Knight. However, after all, he is a veteran elite Earth Knight who has been on many battlefields. His eyes are bright, looking for any space to fight back. He firmly believes fierce attacks have never been able to last. However, this reason is invalid in front of List. He suddenly shouted, "Prairie fire cut!" The fine steel long sword turned into a fan-shaped fire rain, madly attacking Charles. When Charles just withstood this explosive attack, he shouted again, "Heart of Fire Dragon Drill!" This time, the fine steel sword turned into a fire dragon, rolling up the fire attribute magic scattered in the surroundings of the prairie blazing fire slash. With a thrust of the sword, the huge fire dragon transformed from Do-Chi crashed into Charles's body. Boom! Charles's firm defense is like paper, no longer able to maintain. The long sword suddenly left his hand, and the leather armor in front of his body was heavily bombarded by the fire dragon. His whole body, like the long sword, flew into the air. He flipped a few times and fell heavily to the ground. His eyes were seeing stars, and he was dizzy from the fall. When he slightly recovered from the dizziness, he suddenly found that there was a red-hot fine steel long sword on his neck. The tip of the sword is hot, as if it can burn his skin at any time. The owner of the sword, with his back to the sun, could not see his face clearly, but his figure under the light was tall and straight, making people can't help but want to surrender. Chapter 3:14. Defeating Charles Trapp, in List's view, was a very normal thing. Just like how most medicine styles could defeat battle technique styles, one could indeed do whatever they wanted with money. But as List's opponent, Charles felt it was difficult to accept that he was already over 40 years old, but he couldn't beat a 17-year-old young man. This was a result he never expected before the actual combat exercise. The most important point was that he had no power to fight back and was suppressed from the beginning to the end. The situation was quite embarrassing, but the long sword with a scorching aura was already on his neck. Charles had to admit that he had indeed lost to a young man. This should have been a matter of shame and indignation. Considering List's identity, he was quickly relieved. The son of the Tulip family and inherited the bloodline of the Taro family. Such a noble aristocrat should have such strength. In the end, he just sighed and said sincerely, "I lost. There is more than one elite Earth Knight who lost to me. You don't have to worry about it. At the elite Earth Knight level, your strength is not bad. The paralysis effect of the Thunder attribute is also very threatening," List said faintly. In fact, he had only sparred with Marcus and Paris. There was no victory or defeat. There was no life-risking battle. But in the Earth Knight stage, sword fights were relatively rare. It was still mainly group charges. List did not plan to go to the battlefield and fight one-on-one with others. What he wanted to do was to practice archery. Learning from Marcus's multiple arrows, he had already surpassed his master. If it was a real battle on the battlefield, he would mainly shoot arrows from the periphery. Lord Baron is strong. Charles is convinced. The Tulip family's bloodline is one of the noblest I have ever seen. Charles got up, half flattering and half sincere. The only difference between the Tulip family and the Marquis family is time. List threw the fine steel long sword to the servant and took the handkerchief to wipe his hands. The title should be conferred as soon as possible. Time is everyone's enemy. Charles had a deep understanding. Yes, the feeling of being the enemy of time is very terrifying. For an elite Earth Knight like him, He had no hope of breaking through and no money to take pills. In a few years, his physical functions would begin to decline. That was why he was eager to find an opportunity. Sir Baron, if you need help on the road to glory, Charles is willing to charge for Sir Baron. He was ready to follow. However, Liszt thought for a moment and said, I am just a baron, the second son of a count. My knight squad members are all knight who are fighting against fate like me. Because they had no choice but to fight for glory. What about you? You have many choices, so why did you come to the Flower Town? Of course, it was because the Flower Town had a chance. However, Charles knew that such an answer was not what Liszt wanted. The knight chose to follow the Lord, and the Lord would also choose a suitable follower. He had to prove to Liszt that he was a qualified follower. But how to prove it, he couldn't figure it out for a while. Lord Baron, don't worry, Sir Charles. Time is our enemy, but it can also make us more aware of what we want. You can go back first and think calmly about what you want and what you can do. At that time, we will talk about following. Finally, Charles still left the Flower Town with regret, doubt, and a glimmer of hope. Under the apple tree, the new chat partner had been replaced by Zambrata. My lord, did you refuse Charles's following? No, but I didn't accept it either. I told him to go back first and come back after recognizing himself. Liszt sipped his milk tea and said, This is just an excuse for me to send him away. In fact, I haven't thought about whether to accept his following. You also said that his identity is an obstacle. It was actually good to have an elite Earth Knight as a follower, but he was afraid that the other party was an aristocrat with a fake identity. If one day he was exposed by anti-counterfeiters, it would not only be Charles who would lose face, but also Liszt, a poor aristocratic lord who was deceived by a liar. Zambrata nodded and said with some emotion, What hinders him from achieving the glory of a knight is the aristocratic title he values most. Maybe one day, he will think clearly and give up his identity to fight for it. Liszt smiled. He felt that it was unlikely, so he changed the topic. Where were we last time? I think it was about Count Dracula of the Grand Duchy of Rose. He was mistaken for a vampire? Yes, he hid in the bloody castle and never participated in the banquets between the nobles. He was once the most glorious Sky Knight of the Grand Duchy of Rose, and even the daughter of the Grand Duchy of Rose fell in love with him. Zambrata was not good at talking about government affairs, but when it came to telling stories, he could always tell fascinating stories. As the Countess fell asleep, Count Dracula also became gloomy and strange, so some people said that he signed a contract with the devil and turned himself into a vampire to save the Countess. I guess the Countess must be beautiful and moving. When I passed by the bloody castle, I wondered for a long time, but I rarely heard people talk about the Countess's appearance. I couldn't even find out the Countess's identity. It's a pity. Stories of vampires and werewolves were widely circulated. However, it was quite interesting for a living count to be mistaken for a vampire. This gave Liszt a lot of inspiration, giving him the impulse to write the historical novel, Dragons Fighting in the Wild. Perhaps he could make up a great war between ancient people and vampires. The vampires retreated and mingled with the humans. Maybe it's right next to me. It was a pity. The writing plan of Dragons Fighting in the Wild was delayed again. With great difficulty, he finally settled the matters of the carpentry workshop and the brick factory. But before he could relax for a few days, he received a notice from the knights of the Tulip Castle that the young heir of the Golden Wheatear family had visited the Longtaro Castle. Leaves had accompanied him back and informed Liszt to entertain the guest. As aristocratic children, it was natural to socialize with each other. Liszt had to arrange things in Flower Town and accompany the Siren Chi to the beach to play for a few hours. Only then did he bring his signature blizzard beast, Dosen, and his personal guard, Paris, to Tulip Castle early the next morning. Alas, aristocrats are really sociable. There are always 10,000 reasons to get together to eat and drink. I don't want to live such a life. Sitting in a carriage with a black tulip flag, Liszt looked out of the window in boredom. Forests, bushes, wastelands, farmland, and sparse wooden houses. This was an era of fairly backward productivity, full of primitive atmosphere. When the carriage entered Coral City, the bustling crowd seemed to pull him back to the dirty and messy streets of the Middle Ages. However, along the hillside full of tulip flowers, he drove towards the tall and majestic Tulip Castle. The light of civilization came to his face. Chapter 3:15. Liszt, you have to help me. Before seeing the people of the Golden Wheatear family, Levis hurried over and directly pulled Liszt to a corner of the hall. He said anxiously, "Whether brother's marriage will be happy or not depends on you." What does he mean? Liszt didn't react for a moment. He even thought that Levis had some health problems and needed him to do it for him. But the next moment, Levis gave his own answer. Rolia was somewhat resistant to Marquis Roderick's arrangement. During my trip to Golden Island, she didn't give me any face. Although the marriage was set due to pressure, but she could go back on her word at any time. Why? With your identity, you are definitely a qualified marriage partner. The eldest son of a rising count, the future heir of Coral Island, his talent was not bad. He was an elite Earth Knight. He could break through to Sky Knight at any time. The ideal partner of many aristocratic ladies was someone like Levis. Because she has a scoundrel sister. Levis gnashed his teeth a bit. She always urges Rolia to rebel against Marquis Roderick and pursue true happiness. I can't wait to kill her. But I can't. Rolia and her sister have a good relationship. I have to please Rona the Golden Wheatear, Rolia's sister, had just turned 16 this year. Liszt asked, "So what do you need me to do?" "Take Rona the..." "What?" "Conquer her, just like what you did in the Longtaro Castle. With your appearance, it would be easy to conquer a 16-year-old girl, wouldn't it? The two sisters marrying us two brothers would be a classic love story that could be written into a night novel." "Sorry, brother, I refuse," Liszt said directly. "I don't have any plans to get married, at least not at the moment. You should always need an aristocratic wife to accompany you for life. Rona is a good choice. As the daughter of a marquis, there is no better marriage partner." "Sorry, I like to go with the flow. I don't like to insist on an identity." "I really can't understand what you're thinking," Levis complained and then said, "But no matter what, you have to help me please Ranesa." "My dear brother, for the sake of your brother's happiness, you won't refuse, right?" He had already said so. Liszt could not refuse, unless he wanted to ruin Levis's marriage. "Of course, I will try to please Rona. Sometimes, being too handsome could be troublesome." Seeing Liszt nod. Only then did Levis pull him up to the second floor. In the hall on the second floor there was a family tea party. Around a round table with various fruits and pastries sat Madame Penelope, Madame Marie, Olvera, Lytton, and two unfamiliar young men. One was a handsome man in his 20s. The other was a woman with beautiful brown-black hair, big eyes, and a pure face. She looked like a fairy. Her ladylike dress fit her extremely well. Her otherworldly and elegant appearance immediately reminded Liszt of the Brazilian model Debra Silva, whom he had once followed online. Out of 10, he would get 8.5 points, which was similar to Dunico Hyacinth's score. "Roger, Rona, let me introduce you. This is my dear brother, Liszt Tulip. He is currently in theft as the Flower Town's Baron. However, on the Coral Island, everyone knows that Liszt has a great future ahead of him. He is the glory of the Tulip family." In front of outsiders, Levis gave Liszt face. The countryside baron was praised as the glory of the Coral Island. Immediately after, he made introductions to Liszt. "This is Roger Goldenwheat, the son of Marquis Roderick, the heir to the Golden Island, and Rosalia's brother. This is Rona the Golden Wheat, Rosalia's sister. She is the most beautiful flower on the Golden Island. Sir Roger, it is a pleasure to meet you. List smiled. It is also a pleasure to meet you, Sir List. Roger had a standard aristocratic smile on his face as he spoke the standard polite words of communication. List then looked at Ronada. From the moment they met, he decided that for the sake of his brother's happy marriage, he must help her. Beautiful Miss Ronada, it is a pleasure to meet you. Hello, Sir List. Ronada responded in a slightly reserved manner. After the greetings, List took off his frack abier coat and handed it to a servant to hang on a hanger before taking a seat. He was not in a hurry to participate in the conversation. Instead, he just listened quietly with a smile on his face. The topic of conversation was very boring. It was mostly about some aristocratic anecdotes or the prosperity of each other's families. List didn't say much until lunchtime. Of course, it was different from before when he couldn't get a word in. Now, it was purely because he didn't want to say much. Talking about boring aristocratic anecdotes would not give him a witty and talkative image. In fact, he just had to maintain his beauty. With the participation of an aristocrat with an exuberant temperament like him, the overall level of the party was obviously raised by a large margin. Self-confidence gave charm, and no one could ignore the current List. When lunch was over and it was time for afternoon tea, Ronada took the initiative to talk to List. I heard from Levis that Die Elise is a beautiful piano piece that you heard from afar? I don't know if Levis told you the story behind Die Elise, the heartfelt and heartbreaking love between a brother and sister. I heard someone else play this piece, but it was not complete, so I added and modified some of the melody myself. Then you must be a talented pianist. I've tried to play Die Elise a few times, and it sounds so perfect, almost flawless. Almost flawless means that there are some small flaws. Ronada, can I discuss with you, find out where the flaws are, and then correct them? I'm afraid that with my level, I can't give you better advice. It doesn't matter, it's just a mutual discussion. When it comes to piano, I'm just a beginner. I have a good grasp of the melody, but I don't play the piano often. I need a skilled pianist to cooperate with me. List invited Ronada to the piano room. The piano room of Tulip Castle was very large, and there were several grand pianos in it. The servants quickly lifted the cover and brought in tea, as well as a copy of Die Elise, and placed it on the shelf. List sat in front of the piano, his hand gently stroking the keys. The texture of the grand piano was incomparable to his upright piano. I'll play first to familiarize myself with the melody. Ronada smiled and said, I look forward to your performance. Clang. Without too much nonsense, he was like a dedicated performer who was really here to discuss piano problems. His slender and powerful fingers tapped the black and white keys, and his entire temperament suddenly integrated with Die Elise. Before, he exuded calmness. Now it seems that there is warmth flowing from his body. Suppressed and driven by the siren Cheese singing, his current playing skills are already at the master level on only 2 tracks, Die Elise and With You. Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong ding. The crisp notes floated in the empty piano room in an instant, and the slightly cold atmosphere gradually began to warm up. This is the charm of music. It is also the brilliance of Liszt. Chapter 3:16. Men who played the piano always brought a feeling of romance to women. This was the charm of music and the influence of culture. When the aristocracy took the piano as a necessity, playing the piano became the best synonym for aristocratic temperament. If the handsome man who played the piano was added, it would be even more romantic. The song ended. Liszt waited for the notes to completely fall to the ground in the piano room before he turned his head and looked at Ranesa, who was immersed in the music. Miss Ranesa, my performance wasn't very good. I'm sorry. Just call me Ranesa. She smiled sweetly. But I think you played too well. Really, I always thought that there were a few small details that weren't good enough. But now I know that it wasn't a flaw in the score, but I didn't know how to deal with it when I played. Liszt raised his eyebrows. Ranesa continued, after listening to your performance, I know that Dialyse really is a perfect existence. There is no such thing as a perfect thing in the world. You think it's perfect because you know how to appreciate it. Liszt stood up and held out his hand to Rona Nasa. Come on, try to play it once. Maybe you'll have new inspiration and find its flaws for me. She put her hand in Liszt's and let Liszt pull her up. Ranesa felt that the atmosphere at the moment was so good that she sat in front of the piano with a smile on her face. If my performance isn't good enough, don't laugh at me. No one will laugh at a beautiful lady. Liszt sat down, picked up his cup, and took a sip of coffee that he didn't really like. He made a listening posture. Ranesa took a deep breath. Her chest, which wasn't too perky, trembled slightly, showing off her slender figure. Her side profile was dignified and her back was straight. She had the impeccable demeanor of a lady. This was a good demeanor cultivated from a large aristocratic family. The sound of the zither rang out, with a style different from Liszt's. Every note was played on point, but there was always a lack of liveliness, as if she had deliberately played it for the sake of accuracy. Just by listening to this short section, Liszt understood Ranesa's piano level. Her technique was very solid and skilled, but she really did not have much talent. What she heard was not the girlish warmth of Für Elise, but more like a primary school student who was overwhelmed by homework. To be honest, this level of playing was a huge contrast to Ranesa's image. According to Levis's description, Rona Natha often urged Rolia to pursue a free marriage. It was hard to imagine that a person who yearned for freedom would play the piano so rigidly. When the music ended, comparing the two. Sorry, Liszt, I was too nervous when I was playing, she said. Sorry, I was too nervous. I don't think so. There are indeed two parts of the melody that are a bit stiff, but the other parts are quite good. His technique is very skillful, and he didn't make any mistakes. Do you really think so? Ranesa asked expectantly. My piano teacher said that I'm not good at using the piano to express my emotions, but I like playing the piano. It makes me feel like I'm flying like a bird. Liszt thought about it. He was really too embarrassed to go against his conscience and praise the other party for playing well, so he replied, I think you lack a collision of sparks, like you lack some crazy actions in life? Is rebelling against my parents considered a crazy action? Every rebellious youth will rebel against their parents, but these can't be counted as a collision of sparks. Have you ever tried to gallop on a horse without caring about anything? Instead of drinking afternoon tea, why not ride a horse and have a good run? That's relaxing. Liszt proposed a new entertainment. Riding horses, drinking tea, hunting, playing the piano, these were the usual entertainment for aristocrat. He really did not want to listen to Ranesa play the piano. Ranesa was a good listener, but not a very good performer. Ever since he had awakened the soul of a pianist, his appreciation for music had suddenly risen. Although he needed to curry favor with Ranesa in order to help Levis, there was no need to suffer his ears. The girl nodded lightly. Then let's go ride a horse. Liszt was riding Black Dragon. Ranesa was riding a brown-yellow steed of Tulip Castle. This steed was obviously of a much lower bloodline than Black Dragon, as it appeared to be ill at ease in front of Black Dragon. Tulip Castle was along the hillside to the north, and there was a large grassland where one could gallop to one's heart's content. When the two horses galloped, the brown-yellow steed that Ranesa was riding clearly couldn't keep up with Black Dragon. It fell behind by a body's length, and this was after Liszt had slowed down. He lightly kicked Black Dragon's belly, approached Ranesa, and shouted against the wind, From here, further north is the rocky beach by the sea. Ranesa, you must gallop to your heart's content and chase after the source of the wind. Only in this way can you blend into nature like a horse. Giddy up! Black Dragon accelerated. I understand, giddy up. Ronesa also urged the brown-yellow steed to chase after Black Dragon. The wind whistled in her ears. It was the friction of freedom. Casting aside the reservedness of an aristocratic young lady, she let her body wander in the air, feeling particularly broad-minded. She tilted her head and looked at the handsome rider in front of her, who would turn his head and smile at her from time to time through her hair that was messed up by the wind. She suddenly felt that the moment worth looking forward to in life was not when Prince Charming slowly walked over with his horse. Instead, it was when Prince Charming suddenly arrived and picked you up by the waist. Thump, 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 her heartbeat sped up. She watched as Black Dragon gradually pulled away from her, lashed the horsewhip, and shouted, "Giddy up!" The steed was in pain and galloped madly, but it couldn't keep up with Black Dragon's speed. This made her a little anxious, and she constantly urged the brown-yellow steed to gallop. When they rushed through the grassland and entered a piece of wasteland with gravel, the galloping brown-yellow steed suddenly stepped on a loose stone and fell. Caught off guard, Ronesa was also ruthlessly thrown down and fell to the ground. She screamed, "Ah! Stop!" When Liszt heard the scream, he immediately stopped Black Dragon, and then fiercely turned around and rushed towards Ronesa. He dismounted, knelt on one knee, and helped Ronesa up. He gently and somewhat urgently asked, "Where are you hurt, Ronesa?" "No, it's just a little painful from the fall." Ronesa had practiced She moved her wrist to make sure that she wasn't hurt, but her clothes were a little muddy. She said with slight embarrassment, "I'm sorry, I was too anxious to urge the horse." He looked to the side and saw that the brown-yellow steed should have been injured. It was lying on the ground and hadn't gotten up, but it didn't look like it was injured from the way it was eating grass with its head tilted. But it clearly wasn't suitable for riding. Liszt looked at the retainer knight who still hadn't caught up and picked up Ronesa. "Ride with me first." After saying that, he gracefully mounted the steed and put Ronesa on Black Dragon's back. He hugged Ronesa's waist. He kicked Black Dragon's belly and said, "If you're not in a hurry to go back and change your clothes, I'll take you to the rocky beach according to the original plan." Ronesa wriggled her body. Feeling her heart beating faster in the arms of others, she pretended to be calm and replied, "I'm fine, Liszt. Giddy up." One horse and two riders continued to gallop in the sunset. Chapter 317. Holding Ronesa in his arms, Liszt rode Black Dragon slowly along the coastline to enjoy the sunset. He had to admit that he didn't know what to do next. His original intention was to help Levis and leave a good impression on Ronesa, so that she would no longer urge her sister to pursue freedom and marry Levis in peace. But after the mishap, the two of them were riding together. The contact between their chest and back, coupled with the beautiful scene of the sunset falling into the sea, made the atmosphere unwittingly become ambiguous. He felt the slight tremble of the petite body in his arms, and could even hear the acceleration of her heartbeat, as well as the sound of her increasingly heavy breathing. Suddenly, as if they had a telepathic connection, Liszt gently pulled her shoulders. She obediently turned her upper body sideways, turned her neck back, and closed her eyes. Liszt raised his upper body and looked at her long eyelashes. Without any politeness, he wrapped his hands around her slender waist, pulled her into his embrace, and fiercely kissed her rosy cheeks. Sucking. Entanglement. Feeling that this position was somewhat awkward, he abruptly parted the lips and tongues that were passionately kissing. He quickly picked Ronesa up and placed her horizontally on the horse's back. "Ah! Ugh!" Before Ronesa could cry out in alarm, half of her voice was blocked in her mouth, and she could only let out a soft snort through her nose. The passionate kiss was like practicing the difficult piano. He had to use all his strength to cater to it. His mind was empty, without any thoughts. There was only the feedback from his body. There was a warm touch that kept roaming through his clothes, making him feel numb. He wanted to resist, but he couldn't bear to resist. He was lost in the enjoyment of primitive nature. Despite the red sunlight, the shadows of the two of them were elongated. In the distance, the retainer knight of the two aristocrats had gathered together. Seeing the crushed figures, no one dared to approach. They just silently dismounted and pulled their horses to find grass to eat. Xavier Oxtung patted Philip Wool on the shoulder and whispered, "Sir Lord is too powerful." "What?" Philip was somewhat puzzled. Xavier pursed his lips. "Of course it's charm. Sir Lord's charm is unrivaled." "Yes, Xavier, you are right. In Flower Town, everyone respects and loves Sir Lord. He is a born son of glory, and the glory of a knight that favors him shines like the sun." I didn't want to talk about that." Philip was stunned. "Is that so? What are you talking about? Can't you see what Sir Lord is doing?" Xavier said in a fussy tone, "Who is that?" "She's the noble young lady of the Golden Wheat family. She's as unattainable as the stars in the sky. But now, she is in the arms of our Lord, enjoying his passion." "That's normal." Philip looked at the distant seaside. Liszt and Ranessa had already dismounted and were strolling hand in hand among the rocks. "Sir Lord is like the sun, and the young lady of the Golden Wheat's family is like the stars. Isn't it only natural that the sun and the stars are together?" As Xavier suddenly felt that what Philip said was very reasonable, and he was speechless. He really wanted to say that this should be a very surprising thing. His Sir Lord was just a small country baron, while the other party was the young lady of the Golden Wheat's family, a socialite destined to be a great aristocratic madam. As a result, it only took half a day for her to fall into the hands of Sir Lord. However, on second thought, Sir Lord's future was bound to be bright, and his status was equally noble. Why couldn't he hold hands and kiss the young lady of the Golden Wheat's family? He had seen a young lady of the Count's family tidy up Sir Lord's collar at the time of their parting in the Longtaro Castle, full of tenderness. He had also seen the powerful and beautiful female mercenary look at Sir Lord with a deep love in her eyes. From the moment he was selected as a retainer knight, he felt that Sir Lord seemed to shine, exuding the glory of a knight. He also firmly believed that by following Sir Lord, he would receive a lot of glory. Therefore, he looked at the aristocratic men and women strolling hand in hand on the rocky beach. It was very harmonious, as if it was only natural. Sir Lord should be like this. Suddenly, he thought of the female mercenary Paris. Fortunately, she did not follow, otherwise, when she saw Sir Lord and the young lady of the Golden Wheat's family, I'm afraid her heart would split. However, she is just a mercenary. She should be able to understand that Sir Lord is not something someone of her status can hope for. The gap between aristocracy and commoners was engraved in everyone's mind. Without experiencing a mighty ideological liberation movement, such ideological shackles could never be erased. It was just that the transmigrator Liszt, who was supposed to carry the banner of reform, had been corrupted into a member of the aristocracy, dreaming of a life riding a dragon, and had no time for reform. The setting sun eventually sank into the sea, leaving only a faint afterglow and a trace of brightness. Holding Ranessa's hand and looking at the 16-year-old girl's excited smile, he couldn't help but smile as well. "Dear, it's time to go back." "Yes." Ranessa jumped down from a rock and threw herself at Liszt. She grabbed one of his arms as if she was going to hang on to him. She raised her head and blinked her big eyes. "But I don't want to go back yet." Liszt lowered his head and kissed her mouth-watering red lips again. The girl had already overcome the initial awkwardness. She moved her hands away from his arm and wrapped them around his neck. She stood on tiptoe and began to forcefully respond to Liszt's kiss. She was a little over 1.6 meters tall, which made her look a little short in front of Liszt, who was more than 1.85 meters tall. He opened his mouth. After calming his emotions, Liszt released his hands that were still roaming around Ronesa's body. He held her little hand again and repeated, "It's time to go back." Yes. Having received a kiss, Ronesa no longer threw a tantrum and nodded meekly. Liszt whistled. In the distance, Black Dragon, who was grazing, galloped over. Liszt supported Ronesa's waist and sent her up, then nimbly got up. He held the girl's slender waist and urged the horse to gallop. It was already dark by the time they hurried back to Tulip Castle. Under the moonlight, they chatted wittily and stopped at the castle gate. After helping Ronesa off the horse, Liszt did not hold her hand again. This was not a moment of passion and indulgence after a ball, and he needed to take into account the reserved nobility. "Is that Dosen?" Ronesa exclaimed when she saw a huge dog coming towards her. "Yes, do you want to pet it?" Liszt waved his hand, and Trembling Woods wagged its tail and approached, letting Ronesa stroke its shiny black fur. Liszt seemed to see his guard Paris poking her head out of a window on the first floor of the castle, but then shrank back. He didn't care and just smiled at Ronesa. "Dosen is about a year old. I was lucky to meet it when it was young. I've never seen such a docile intermediate world of Warcraft. Liszt, will you ride it into the battlefield?" "Of course, it will be my companion in battle." Ronesa immediately looked at him with her big eyes, which were bright and twinkling. "You have a great future ahead of you. I hope to see you enjoy even more glory in the near future." Chapter 3:18. At the banquet, Liszt once again returned to his reticent state. Only this time, a young girl came to talk to him. "Liszt, can we go to the flower town tomorrow to take a look? I think it must be very beautiful there." "Of course. If you want to go, the flower town will always welcome you," Liszt responded with a smile. He cut a piece of steak and ate it gracefully. On the other side, Roger Golden Oats, who was similarly gracefully eating his steak, glanced at Ronesa with a smile, and then looked at Liszt. Without saying anything, he raised his glass and clinked it with Levis's, and then took a sip of the crescent wine. On the other side, Madame Penelope was eating a fried egg on her plate while silently exchanging glances with her granddaughter Elvira. Then, she said to Ronesa, "Tulip Castle is nothing strange for the Harvest Castle. If youngsters feel bored, they can go outside to relax. The flower town is a good place. If the carriage wasn't too bumpy, I would often go to the flower town to look at the scenery." "Madam, do you and Elvira want to go together tomorrow?" "Oh no. I am old and prefer to stay in my old house, quietly watching the creepers crawl all over the wall. My creepers are very vigorous, maybe they will give birth to a sprite worm. Let me tell you, Ronesa, a sprite worm was really born in my potted plant. Liszt knows this better than anyone else." Ronesa's interest was immediately piqued. What sprite worm was it? "A black nightshade sprite. The black nightshade potted plant was sick, so I took it away with the intention of getting a new black nightshade potted plant for my grandmother. However, I did not expect it to give birth to a sprite worm. Then, my grandmother gave it to me as a gift." "Wow, that is really a heartwarming story. I really hope that my grandmother can also give me a potted plant to give birth to a sprite worm." Liszt sighed in all seriousness. "But since then, on every festival, my grandmother would only give me a potted plant and tell me, Liszt, please take good care of this potted plant, maybe there is a sprite worm hidden inside." Ha! Everyone at the banquet laughed, especially Rona Nasser. She was elated. It wasn't a humorous short joke, but it sounded like the most humorous cold joke in the world to her. This made Liszt feel very embarrassed. Just a few simple teasing words made her laugh like this. If he said a few really interesting jokes, wouldn't she have to do artificial respiration? The banquet ended in jubilation. Liszt left the restaurant where they were still chatting and went downstairs to check on Dosen. He had just heard Dosen shouting outside for a while. Now, whenever Dosen went out, his manservant, Tom, would take care of him. Thomas was the first manservant and was always at Liszt's beck and call. Tom was the second manservant and was always at Dosen's beck and call. Tom, what happened to Dosen just now? List looked at Dosen, who was lying on the ground and gnawing on a bone. Master, Dosen saw a Doberman just now, but after Dosen shouted a few times, the Doberman ran away in fear. Well, it was probably Dosen who wanted to be friends with the Doberman, but the Doberman clearly did not have such an idea. List rubbed Dosen's neck, got up and left, ready to return to the castle. At this time, he heard movement beside him, but he could not see anyone. Paris. There was no one around. Paris appeared. Sir Baron. You haven't rested yet, what's the matter? List asked gently. Paris opened her mouth and whispered, The young lady of the golden wheat family, she is very beautiful. List nodded. You mean Ronassa, she is indeed very beautiful. Then will she become the mistress of Flower Town? Sorry, Sir Baron, I am just a little curious, Paris said a little awkwardly. List glanced at Paris, who was becoming more and more feminine after recovering her figure. List suddenly felt a lot of pressure. He did not want to be a handsome man who attracted bees and butterflies, but fate was always fickle. It liked to entangle all simple feelings and make people owe debts everywhere. He raised his head and looked at the stars in the sky. Blinking, blinking. There was no moon tonight, only these twinkling stars. Withdrawing his gaze, he said calmly, Maybe, maybe not. You know, I have never thought about this. I like to let everything take its course. Just like you don't know if it will be sunny or rainy when you wake up in the morning, but no matter what the weather is, it is a new day. Embrace it, that's all. After saying that, he patted Paris on the shoulder. Good night, Paris. After that, he did not wait for Paris to respond and went straight into the castle. Paris was left behind, chewing hard on the word, let nature take its course. She is a black dragon gang, and she has 10 years left to live. Life for her, is it not natural to let nature take its course? With a laugh, she no longer entangled in the sadness in her heart. She went back to the room, took out a book, and slowly read it under the crystal light in the Tulip Castle aisle. One day, List said, You should learn to read. Then she began to learn to read and write Serpentine, even though it seemed to her that it was too difficult. As soon as he returned to the corridor of the restaurant, he saw that everyone had come out. List, Roger and I are going to the study to talk about something. You and Elvira accompany Ronassa. Levis said. Okay. When Roger and Levis left, Elvira helped Madame Penelope and said, I will take grandmother home first, you go have a cup of tea first. Saying that, she winked at List. In the blink of an eye, the lively crowd dispersed, but Madame Marie did not leave after sending Lytton to do his homework. She was the mistress of the castle and could not be rude. List did not want to stay with Madame Marie any longer. He asked the servant to pick up the frac habillure on the shelf and asked, Ronassa, do you want to go for a walk outside? Well, I would like to. So, Madame Marie, do you want to take a walk together? List asked again. Madame Marie smiled. You go ahead. I am not used to walking at night, but it is cold outside. Ronassa, List, remember to ask the servant to bring an extra coat, don't freeze. Thank you for reminding me, Madame Marie. Walk, just a walk. At most, they would hold hands, hug and kiss a few times. About an hour later, List took Ronassa back to Tulip Castle. Dear, I am too excited today, I am afraid that I will not be able to sleep at night, Ronassa said reluctantly when he was about to take her back to her room. Rest well, I will take you to the Flower Town to play tomorrow. Then it's settled. Of course. The servant was standing at the door. Without giving Ronassa a goodbye kiss, List waved his hand, turned around, and left. A long time after List had left, Ronassa was still sitting on the bedside, smiling foolishly, until the maid told her that young Master Roger had arrived. Brother, did you have a good time today? Roger drank some wine, his face still red. Ronassa was a little shy, but she still said confidently, Yes, brother, I had a good time today. Chapter 319. It was the end of the month. Tomorrow was the last day. If he did not vote, the monthly ticket would expire. All right. Actually, it was not that he wanted to request for a ticket. He was just speaking his mind. Dalong's results were very good. This caused Lao Bai's mental state to be a little unbalanced. He wanted to write well, but his train of thought was a little messed up. He wanted to enrich the background of the novel and portray the image of the aristocrats, but it seemed that he had failed. When writing such a love story, he was afraid that it would be too shallow. Secondly, he was afraid that the sex scenes would be too touching. Thirdly, he was afraid that he would not be able to grasp the degree of control. Before writing, he would delete and edit. After publishing, he would consult the reader's opinions and rewrite. He would always be unsatisfied. But if he did not write, for an old man like Lao Bai who had been single for many years, it was simply suffocating. Therefore, he would open up an additional chapter and place it in the related works to make up for the sex scenes. He would not include the main text. Those who did not like to read love stories could directly subscribe to the farming chapter. Those who liked it could go to the related works to find it. Wouldn't it be better to have the best of both worlds? Finally, Chapter 320. Some people are shallow, some are golden on the outside, but rotten on the inside. One day you will meet a person as gorgeous as the rainbow, and when you meet this person, you will feel that others are just floating cloud. Ronassa leaned against the window. Looking at the blue sea outside, Liszt's words seemed to be echoing in his ears when they were at the height of their love. When you are happy, love reaches the depths of your soul, but when you wake up in the morning, you will find that your side is empty, leaving only some messy bedding. Brother Roger said, never fall in love. Lady Penelope said it was time to forget oneself for someone at least once. She did what Lady Penelope said, very simply, let go of the constraints and enjoy. But she found that it was difficult to do what her brother said, never fall in love. Do you want to tell me that you are a person who is golden on the outside, but rotten on the inside? She gently waved her hand and wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes. But how do you know why you are not a person as gorgeous as the rainbow? Do you know how many nobles have pursued me on Golden Island? But after I met you, those people have become floating cloud. She bit her lower lip. She raised her head and tried to appear calm. Unfortunately, I was born on Golden Island, a woman of the golden wheat family, and you are just a country baron. Even if you have a great future, you are still weak. Thank you for giving me an unforgettable moment of joy. I look forward to seeing you next time, Liszt. The sea breeze whistled. The ship sailed into the vast blue sea. Tulip Castle. Liszt stayed in the piano room, not typing for a long time. Until Vera came in. Why are you hiding in the piano room, but not playing the piano? I saw that your retainer knight and your dog did not leave. It's strange, you usually don't want to stay in Tulip Castle. Is it because of the beautiful and charming Miss Ronassa, my affectionate and cruel brother? Cruel? Liszt asked lightly. Isn't it cruel to not have a farewell greeting? Isn't it cruel to quietly leave her room? Isn't it cruel to take away a girl's most precious thing without giving anything in return? You saw everything. Vera smiled proudly. Nonsense, there are so many servants in Tulip Castle, they are all my informants. Do you think that after I was in theft, this place became Madame Marie's territory? Impossible. Liszt could not deny it. To be honest, this was the Earl's territory now. In the future, it would be Levis's territory. It really had nothing to do with Ulvera. I can't help but admire you, Liszt. You've become a socialite killer. In Longtaro Castle, you slept with Dunico Hyacinth and didn't even leave a fart behind. In Tulip Castle, you slept with Rona Golden Wheat and similarly patted your butt, not even willing to send a fart. Don't always say such an inelegant word like fart. Liszt found that Elvira had become a Chunibu girl again, and his mood was not very good. It was probably because he was a scumbag. He was panting and unable to accept it. But the development of things was beyond his expectations. He really just wanted to help Levis please Rona Goldenwheat and leave a good impression on her. He didn't want to urge her sister to seek freedom and happiness, and just be the future mistress of Tulip Castle. However, from the moment he stumbled, things had already gotten out of hand. Not to mention the impulse after 12 o'clock. Actually, he really wanted to find someone to talk to, and Elvira was barely suitable. I originally planned to give her a newly composed piano piece and tell her a story about Sky City when we parted, but time was limited. Who would have thought that Roger would leave after breakfast? Maybe he was afraid that you would make his sister fall. Elvira's tone was a little gentle. In the eyes of the Golden Wheat family, women are just props for networking. Since they have already made friends with Coral Island through Rona Golden Wheat family, they will naturally not leave another one. By the way, what's the story about Sky City? Coaxing a little girl, you won't like to hear it. What about the piano piece? You can even compose a piano piece, quickly play it for me. Liszt stood up and left the grand piano. I find that you are really leisurely. Sorry, I have no inspiration and can't play anything. Let's talk about it next time. It is indeed getting late, I should go back to the flower town. For a night, I have not been practicing seriously for the past 2 days. Liszt shook off the somewhat angry Elvira. Liszt was entangled by Levis, who had just returned from seeing him off. Liszt, are you still my brother? I worship you from the bottom of my heart. You really succeeded in getting Rona Golden Wheat family. Do you know how ugly Roger's face was when he left in the morning? It was so cool. Roger is angry, yet you are happy. Are you not afraid that he will destroy your marriage with Rona Golden Wheat family? He is not an ignorant little girl like Rona Golden Wheat family. No matter how angry he is, he will not stop the marriage alliance between the Golden Island and the Coral Island. Besides, you got Rona Golden Wheat family by relying on your own ability. You and I were willing, who could find fault with you. Levis said indifferently, I really envy you for having such a handsome face. Liszt had an ordinary appearance. Even though he relied on his status as the Count's eldest son, he still repeatedly ran into a wall. After all, not every aristocratic young lady would be dizzy and be attracted by the title of Countess. Instead, handsome aristocrats like Liszt were more popular. They did not seek everlasting love, only a moment of pleasure. Handsome people also have handsome troubles. Liszt did not want to talk about this topic. He was unwilling to admit that he had become a member of the countless dissolute aristocrats. He felt that he had feelings in his heart. After making love with Duniko, if the other party asked him to stay, he was even willing to marry her, not minding any past. After making love with Rona Golden Wheat family, he excitedly prepared to play the piano, but in the end, he could only sit facing the air. Perhaps this was the true face of aristocracy, the separation of desires and interests. Everyone sacrificed or indulged for the sake of interest. Therefore, after careful consideration, he still felt that he should move his eyes away from love and earnestly prepare for the great undertaking of dragon riding, striving to become the lord of the dragon field. By the way, big brother, when are you and Relia going to get married? From the moment you got Rona Golden Wheat family, there was no longer any barrier between me and Relia. Our wedding will be held in September of this year, said Levis excitedly. Liszt nodded and said, Then you should put your mind at ease and manage this marriage seriously. Marriage naturally needs to be managed seriously. This matter concerns the future development of the Coral Island and must be treated with caution. However, it does not hinder the joy outside of marriage. Levis blinked his eyes. Next week, there will be an underground ball held in Snake Spear City. I will take you there to experience it. No, I want to go home. After a night of indulgence without responsibility, he needed time to recover from the damage to his mind. How could he participate in a licentious party? The sound of hooves was urgent. The flower town was in sight. Chapter 321. Quin's Tauern Conjecture? In a town called Quin in the Grand Duchy of Brass, the decaying corpse of a Tauern was found. Is there really such a creature as a Tauern? Liszt casually flipped through a few of the magic books brought by Elkson and happily paid for them. In order to encourage Elkson to choose useful books for him, he adopted the practice of buying ordinary worthless books by the box and valuable books by the book. Among this batch of books there were a few that were really good. So, he paid a total of 7 gold coins. He would spend a dozen or 20 gold coins just to read books every month. Now that he has money, he doesn't care about this expense. It's like subscribing to a few newspapers on Earth. He doesn't read most of the magic books, because it's really of no value. Just like now, he doesn't want to read most of the night novels. His taste has been spoiled by a strange story. Moreover, Dragons Raging in the Wild has stopped updating indefinitely, and even the interest in searching for information has disappeared. There are more and more books on the bookshelves, but fewer and fewer books are being read. On the contrary, the siren Chi was reading with relish. Those boring magic experiment notes, in her eyes, were as tempting as gold and silver jewelry. The innocent little siren was about to become a bookworm. In order to avoid such a thing, he played the piano and often took her out to sea and discussed magic with her so that she wouldn't be bored. Big brother, Chi has learned a new spell. Look. She stretched out her hand, and a water ball immediately condensed. She aimed at the window and shot it out, exploding in midair. This is a water bullet. The principle is similar to water arrow, but it is much more powerful and consumes less magic power. Liszt had long been shocked by her magic talent, so he nodded plainly and said, "Continue to work hard and strive to be a great magician." Well, Chi will work hard. Every time he talked to Chi, it was like a psychological counseling, and all negative emotions could be cured. Let him forget the mess of desire, interest, passion, and resolution that took place in the castle with a name. He brewed a cup of biluacon. It was tea brewed from the leaves of the green tea tree. Because the leaves were a little curly, it was named biluacon. Chi, come and have a taste of my tea art. This is a new drink. In this world, apart from me, I'm afraid you're the only one who can drink it. Thank you, big brother. Chi picked up the transparent crystal teacup and took a sip. Suddenly, her expression changed. Brother, it's so bitter. Chi doesn't like it. Sweetness comes after bitterness. Taste it again, and you'll notice that the fragrance of the tea lingers in your mouth. However, Chi drank another 2 mouthfuls and still complained of bitterness. It doesn't taste good. Brother, Chi doesn't want tea, Chi likes fruit juice. All right. Liszt regretted that his first attempt to share tea ended in failure. He didn't mind Chi's saliva and drank the remaining half of the tea. With 3 tea trees, he couldn't even afford to drink a cup of tea a day, so he could only save and save. Chi floated on the surface of the shell again, reading the book carefully. Even the chaos of the world could not disturb her. He put down the teacup. Liszt walked to the piano. His heart suddenly fluctuated, as if a swan rose and danced on the lake of his heart. Then, another swan flew over and danced with it. Then, 2 more swans flew over and danced together. He recalled the feeling in his mind, and his hands unconsciously tapped on the keyboard, moving rhythmically. One note after another bloomed and rose from the upright piano, like bright red roses blooming, forming 4 dancing swans. Chi closed the book in her hand and looked at Liszt in surprise. Liszt was unconsciously immersed in the piano performance. 4 swans danced around him. They were composed of rhythmic note. Suddenly, a swan screamed miserably, broke its wings, and fell on the piano. Blood dyed the keys red, as if Liszt was playing with blood. Then, the other swan screamed and broke its wings. Blood dyed the entire piano red. The last two swans flew away in horror, one to the left and the other to the right, leaving the bright red piano and the owner of the piano, Liszt, still plucking the keys, letting the notes dance with blood. The swans died, flew, and everything turned into nothingness. The room was still the worm room. Ella was dozing, Achi listened with her head tilted. Only Liszt sat in front of the upright piano, playing the black and white keys gracefully, his fingers like 10 elves jumping. Until the end of the last note. Liszt quickly grabbed the paper and pen on the piano, dipped them in ink, and used the most abstract and scribbled marks to record all the melodies in his mind. Just 3 pages. In a moment it was full. Comparing the melody that was still lingering in his ears and correcting a few wrong notes, he finally recorded the new piece. With a pen in the blank space, he wrote Saint-Saëns Swan Piano Solo as the title. In 19th-century Paris, France, there was a musician, Saint-Saëns, who was not very famous later, who created the symphony Carnival of the Animals for fun. Because many of the tunes were malicious changes of other people's tunes without permission, it was never published. Only one of the Swan was performed in public, but it became a masterpiece of Saint-Saëns and a classic. Describing the graceful and noble posture of the swan swimming in the water, her lonely but very holy figure. Liszt didn't know why. Inspiration suddenly broke out, and without relying on the smoke task, he recalled the melody. After thinking about it, he crossed out the Saint-Saëns snake text and wrote a new title, Liszt Swan Piano Solo, and solemnly included it in his piano score. Before that, he already had 2 piano pieces, Liszt with You and Liszt to Alice re-edit. To Alice had the background story written by someone else, so it could not be directly used as a composition. It could only be included in the name of revision and compilation. If I'm not careful, I'll become a piano master. The day after his return, the flowers also returned and brought good news. The main body of the lighthouse had been completed and the crystal lamps could be started. The crystal lamps were specially made, using a magic array to guide the magic in the crystal and release it in the form of light. Unfortunately, the light of the crystal lamps was not very bright. It was difficult to guarantee that it could illuminate 2 or 3 kilometers away. When they arrived at Black Horse Port, Jemiah rammed Earth, who was whipped so hard that he could not walk, could already limp to the ground with a cane. Sir Lord, rubber is amazing. Using rubber water to mix the sand and stones, the speed of building the lighthouse is far beyond expectations, and the degree of solidity after solidification is similar to glutinous rice juice. Coupled with the gray bricks you guided the firing, it greatly saved the time of selecting materials for the lighthouse, so we built it in 5 days. He pointed to the 10-meter-high lighthouse at the head of the rocky beach with a hint of pride. He used to live in the shadow of his teacher Mbappe, but now he could finally build it independently. The lighthouse was not big, not tall, and not thick. The lower half was mainly made of rocks, while the upper half was mainly made of brick. The lines between the stones and bricks were not neat, but the structure was complete. Teacher Marcus, I will leave this crystal lamp to you. When the flower needs to return at night, you send someone to light it on the lighthouse. If there is no need for navigation, take it down. Understood, sir. The lighthouse was now completed. Liszt quickly began to check the smoke task. Chapter 322. This chapter is Cherry Blossom in Autumn. The Secret of the Sea Snake Monster? It's not a book about powerful magic, but a popular science book about water monsters? He was just about to sigh when he was rewarded with an insignificant book. Suddenly, he found that the name of the magic book had the words Sea Snake Monster, and his heart skipped a beat. The sea snake monster immediately reminded him of the six-headed giant sea snake monster that chased after the siren He. Then he remembered the invisible dragon chain quest, which was also involved in the form of a magic book. At this moment, he had a strong premonition that the crisis had been around him. Perhaps, this time, it is the chain quest of Guru Mitta. The Guru Mitta, which is likely to be a mid-level sea monster, has never left this area, hiding in the dark and spying on us. Very likely. Otherwise, there is no need to reward him with a sea snake science book. However, in the face of the threat of Guru Mitta, he was only nervous for a moment and then relaxed. The invasion of the invisible dragon has been dealt with, so what if there is another mid-level sea monster? With the help of the smoke mission, it will not be too difficult to deal with this sea snake. The power of fate is not ordinary. Moreover, sea monsters can only live in the deep sea. If it dares to come to the shallow sea area, it is courting death. Today's Flower Town, today's list, is no longer weak. Be careful for a while, hurry to complete more smoke missions, get more information about Guru Mitta and the chain quest rewards. Finally, solve the hidden dangers. Thoughts flashed. A new smoke mission was issued. Mission: look through the magic books brought by Elk-sun. Do you feel that every book is contaminated with the screams of the magic apprentices? It is the helplessness and despair after the soul is broken. Please wash away the grievances in the magic books. Reward: a research notebook. The grievances of the magic apprentices? List frowned and thought, what does this mean? Could it be that Elk-sun killed a lot of magic apprentices in order to get these magic books? Elk-sun doesn't look like a homicidal maniac, and killing magic apprentices can get magic books? His intuition told him that Elk-sun would not kill a magic apprentice. But reason tells him that it is necessary to carefully examine Elk-sun and not to trust anyone. If Elk-sun is really a homicidal maniac, then I have to kill Elk-sun if I want to wash away the grievances in the books. Let's go back to Flower Town first, and then plan the next step. On the Coral Island, it was strictly forbidden to kill people at will. This was a rule issued by the Count. Even the nobles were not allowed to kill people at will outside their territory. Even if it was within their territory, killing people at will would be punished by the Count. Although the Lord had absolute jurisdiction over the territory, if one's behavior exceeded the morals of the nobles, the superior lord would naturally teach one a lesson. Of course, aristocrats usually cherish their serfs very much and wouldn't kill them at will. The superior lords also wouldn't interfere with what their followers did in their territory. There was no need to quarrel with his followers over the lives of a few civilians. However, magicians were not nobles. If they dared to kill people, the nobles would definitely punish them. Liszt appreciated Elk-sun very much. He was polite, not rigid, and a good partner to work with. But as a noble, if he finds out that Elk-sun killed people at will, he will never be soft. He rested for the night. The next day, he took a boat back to Flower Town. During the voyage, Liszt was no longer bored as he used to be. Gort, who returned with the ship, was always bragging. He kept looking around with his binoculars to make sure that Gramitta didn't sneak up on him. On the sea, mid-level sea monsters were not easy to deal with. He was ready to not resist in case he encountered Gramitta. He stopped the ship and took back the calm pearl. He let Gramitta wreak havoc and just hid in the wooden boat to survive. And he was covered with smoked grass juice, waiting for Gramitta to finish wreaking havoc before rowing home. This was not cowardice. This was helplessness. He had to return to Flower Town, but without preparation, he would encounter Gramitta in the vast sea. Resistance would only lead to a quick death. However, without the siren He on board, Gramitta may not be interested in the flowers. During this time, he had sailed back and forth dozens of times and had not bumped into Gramitta. It could be seen that the sea monster had little interest in ship. In the tension, He returned to Flower Town smoothly. List went straight to the castle and rummaged through the magic books brought by Elksun. Some of the magic books he determined had no harmful content were given to the siren He to read, and some were left in the bookshelf in the study. During this time, I only received 2 boxes of books from Elksun, and the reward should be in there. Quickly rummaged, and soon, a book called The Secrets of Sea Snake Water Monsters was turned out from the inconspicuous corner of the bookshelf. He hadn't seen this book before. Probably the butler Carter helped him sort it out and put it on the bookshelf. Before he was ready to read it, he called the guard Paris. "Lord Baron, what can I do for you? It's a small task. I hope you can help me complete it. I like magic books, you know." Of course, everyone in the town should know that Lord Baron likes to read. These books were purchased for me by Elksun Truth, but I now suspect that there are some problems with the origin of these books. I want you to help me secretly investigate to make sure that they were purchased in a legal way. List said he didn't want to interrogate Elksun directly. First, he didn't want to alert the enemy, and second, if it was a misunderstanding, it wouldn't look good. It's a very easy task. I will complete it as soon as possible, Lord Baron. Then let's talk about the reward for the task. Paris suddenly smiled. It's just a small task, it's free. After all, I just take the money and don't work, which has caused a lot of gossip among the officials in the town. Gossip? List raised his eyebrows. It seemed that someone was not very satisfied with his salary arrangement. I will put an end to this kind of gossip. No, Lord Baron, I don't mind it. After Paris finished speaking, she bid farewell and left in a carefree manner to carry out the free mission. List did not forget what she had said and directly called the butler Carter. "Mr. Carter, do you know that someone in the town complained that Paris's salary was too high?" "Sorry, master, I don't seem to have noticed this. You tell the servants not to forget to ask more about what the town officials said when they go out. If there is any discordant content, tell me quickly." "Yes, master." After instructing the butler Carter, List planned to investigate slowly. When he was alone in the study, he picked up the milk tea on the table, and his face quickly became gloomy. Chapter 323. This chapter is Bitter Tree, 20,000 coins reward, and there is another chapter after that. The relationship between the Lord and the follower is also a game. If the Lord is strong, the follower will be self-disciplined and loyal. If the Lord is weak, the follower will be presumptuous and evasive. The pattern of Red Crab Island is that the Lord is weak and the followers are restless. Therefore, List has been learning how to be a qualified lord. If he stayed on Coral Island all his life, he would not need to learn anything. With the protection of his family, his followers would not dare to be presumptuous. But his ambition is not Flower Town, or a small island like Black Horse Island. Count and Marquis are not his goal. His goal is at least the title of Grand Duke, to ride a dragon. The future is bright and the road is tortuous. Every step now is planning for the future and laying a solid foundation. So, the gossip behind Paris's salary was just a small breakthrough for him to try to control his followers. After thinking for a moment, he calmed down as there are more important things waiting for him to deal with. Sea snake. A type of venomous snake that lives in the sea and has colorful patterns on its body. Sea snakes are found in shallow water areas, but sea snake monsters have not been found many times, and most of them are found in the deep sea, or should be called sea snake sea monsters. Water monster, sea monster, they all mean the same thing. There is no such thing as an officially recognized official name or an internationally accepted academic name in this world. Each region has a different name for the species. The author of The Secrets of Sea Snake Water Monsters is the court mage of Star Duchy. Star Duchy is near the sea, and the author studies water magic, so he often goes out to sea by boat to find sea monsters. This popular science book mainly introduces sea snakes and sea monsters. A total of 7 kinds of sea snakes and sea monsters are recorded. There were 5 low-level sea monsters: the rainbow sea snake, the blue ring sea snake, the ice ring sea snake, the red ring sea snake, and the double-headed sea snake. There were also 2 mid-level sea monsters, the 6-headed sea snake and the frost king sea snake. Every type of sea snake was introduced in terms of toxicity, magic, size, and other data. Of course, the data is not comprehensive because the number of observations is very few and the research conditions are limited. What attracted List's attention was the introduction of the 6-headed king hydra. The 6-headed king hydra is more powerful than the frozen hydra king. I've observed it twice. The first time was an adult 6-headed king hydra with a body length of more than 12 meters. The second time was a juvenile 6-headed king hydra with a body length of 6 meters and 3 heads that couldn't release magic. This great magician's data was very solid, and he had even hand-drawn illustrations. The somewhat abstract 6-headed sea serpent king had a very thick body, about 2/3 of its body length, and the remaining 1/3 was made up of 6 slender snake heads. There were gorgeous patterns, mainly black and white. The 6 snake heads were capable of releasing water arrow volley, water wave shield, water whirlpool, powerful water pillar, water blade, and water waterfall respectively. The 6-headed king hydra is similar to the 2-headed hydra. According to my speculation, for every 2 meters it grows, a snake head will mature and release magic. The 6-headed sea serpent king feeds on fish, dolphins, and humans who fall into the water, but it won't take the initiative to attack ships. If it is angered, it will release magic crazily for more than half an hour. I found that the 6 heads of the adult 6-headed sea serpent king hydra have the same thinking and release magic in a very orderly manner. However, the juvenile 6-headed sea serpent king hydra's thinking is not consistent, and it is easy to be distracted, resulting in failure to cast spells and change target. Because he hadn't caught the 6-headed sea serpent king, the great magician didn't record more data. In his magic book, he didn't mainly record the attributes of sea serpents and sea monsters, but a secret about sea serpents: the amazing reaction between the snake blood fruit and the blood of sea serpents and sea monsters. According to the book, the snake blood fruit is a kind of medicinal material that can be eaten as a fruit, although it tastes terrible. Poisonous snakes like to eat the snake blood fruit, so there must be snake blood fruit around them. When a hunter is bitten by a snake, he will immediately look for the snake blood fruit around to detoxify it. Children with diarrhea and pregnant women with dystocia can all be treated by eating the snake blood fruit. In the Myriad Stars Principality, the snake blood fruit was very famous. Because a large number of poisonous snakes lived there, the lords had to grow a large number of snake blood fruits in order to treat snake venom at any time. At first, the great magician just wanted to study the relationship between the snake blood fruit and snake venom in order to formulate an antidote to make money. However, after using snake blood to cultivate the snake blood fruit, he found that the snake blood fruit grew very vigorously. He then began to catch all kinds of snakes and release snake blood to feed the snake blood fruit. Until one time, when he used the blood of a sea serpent monster, he suddenly found that there was a problem with the snake blood fruit. It unexpectedly gave birth to a snake blood fruit sprite worm. After repeated exploration, he spent God knows how much money to buy the sea serpent monster. He finally concluded that the blood of the low-level sea serpent monster had a small probability of stimulating the snake blood fruit to give birth to a sprite worm. The blood of the mid-level sea serpent monster had not been tested, so he didn't know what the probability was. This should have been a world-shaking discovery. By relying on such a discovery, he could definitely breed a large number of snake blood fruit sprite worms to make money. However, when someone did the math for him, he was left speechless. 20 low-level sea serpents could probably nurture a sprite worm. On average, the price of buying a sea serpent monster was 160 gold coins. Low-level World of Warcraft certainly couldn't reach this price. However, sea serpents were difficult to catch, so the price was generally high. In other words, he had to spend 3,200 gold coins to breed a snake bloodfruit sprite worm. However, at the local market price, a snake bloodfruit sprite worm only cost 2,000 gold coins. Relying on sea snakes and sea monsters to nurture a snake bloodfruit sprite worm would result in a huge loss. The great magician angrily shelved his money-making plans. He wrote his findings in the book Secrets of Sea Serpent Monsters and published it for sale. He believed that it was still meaningful for him to at least find a way to breed a sprite worm. Therefore, List raised his head from the book and muttered, "The Gyuramita chasing a chi might just be an underage six-headed sea serpent king with 4 heads capable of magic and a body length of about 8 meters. Moreover, snakes like to eat snake bloodfruit. Maybe I can use snake bloodfruits to attract the 6-headed sea serpent king? Or interfere with the casting of the 4 heads." List closed the magic book. He knew that snake bloodfruits were the focus of hunting the Gyuramita. He needed to buy a batch of snake bloodfruits. However, it seemed that there were no snake bloodfruits on the Coral Island. At least, it was the first time he had heard of such a fruit. According to the great magician's records, the blood of sea serpents can give birth to snake bloodfruit sprite worms. If I dig into the principle, I may be able to crack the secret of sprite worm breeding. Unfortunately, List didn't have the ability to dig into the secret for the time being. He also didn't have any wizards under him who could do research. If I kill the Gyuramita, its blood may be used to breed snake bloodfruit. Maybe I can successfully breed a snake bloodfruit sprite worm in one go. However, the risk is not small. It is better to directly sell the blood of mid-level sea serpent. Maybe I can sell it for a better price. The materials on a low-level World of Warcraft ranged from a dozen gold coins to several hundred gold coins. The materials on a mid-level World of Warcraft were at least 10 times that of a low-level World of Warcraft. It would not be difficult to sell it for several hundred gold coins. Rather than wasting snake blood on snake blood fruits, it was better to sell it for gold coins. Chapter 324. The matter of the snake bloodfruit was entrusted to his caravan and Tulip Castle's caravan. He also wrote to Aubrey Whitegrass of Beer Castle and asked the other party to also inquire about the snake bloodfruit and buy a batch. After doing all this, he waited for news of the snake bloodfruit, waited for the results of Paris's investigation, and thought about how to hunt Gyuramita. Gyuramita is chasing the siren, which means that a chi is the best bait, but I can't let a chi get hurt, so luring Gyuramita in the sea is not advisable. Not in the sea, only on the shore. To accurately lure Gyuramita, a chi's identity as a siren was indispensable. In List's mind, a chi was very important. He must ensure the safety of the siren. Maybe I can lure Gyuramita on the shore, but how do I lure it on the shore? Or rather, how does Gyuramita pursue the siren chi? What does it rely on to track it? He went into the worm room. He asked a chi. A chi tilted her head and thought for a moment. She replied, "Brother, a chi is not very clear. In the sea, I can't get rid of Gyuramita. Maybe it's based on a chi's scent in the sea. Just as a hound can track its prey by the smell of the air, maybe Gyuramita can also track a chi through the sea." It could basically be determined that Gyuramita was using this method to track a chi. "I'm going to hunt Gyuramita," List said. "This may require your cooperation to lure Gyuramita out of the sea. Brother, can you defeat Gyuramita?" Although a chi didn't mean to despise him, this question still hurt List's self-esteem. He couldn't help but raise his voice. "As long as we are well prepared, it's just a mid-level sea monster. Killing it is as easy as flipping a hand. Ah, brother, you're amazing. Achi clapped her hands. Brother, what should Achi do? Should I go directly into the sea to lure it? It's too dangerous to go into the sea. Although I need to use you to lure Guramikta, but your safety is the most important thing. List rubbed Achi's blue hair. I plan to widen a river by the sea around Flower Town. You will wait upstream of the river and lure Guramikta into the river. The sea was the home of the sea monsters. It was impossible for List to defeat a mid-level sea monster at sea, even if it was an underage mid-level sea monster. Therefore, luring Guramikta ashore was the most important step. However, he suddenly remembered that he seemed to have read in Man and Nature that sea snakes could come ashore. The documentary had explained that sea snakes laid eggs on the beach. In other words, it was possible that Guramikta could move freely on the shore. After all, a sea snake was still a snake, and all snakes could crawl. But on second thought, sea monsters lived in the deep sea. Logically speaking, they had already adapted to living in the deep sea, so their movements on the shore would definitely be greatly restricted. So no matter what, he had to lure Guramikta ashore. He took out a pen and paper and drew a sketch on the table. He simply sketched the coastline and river channels. He circled around the upper reaches of the river. Achi, this is your position. When Guramikta swims over, I will cut off its escape route from here. I'll get Dosen to release rock thorns around this area and cover it with densely packed solid rock thorns to restrict Guramikta's movement. List explained to Achi. While scribbling, he revised the hunting plan. Guramikta is about 8 meters long and has a short and thick body. According to the ratio, its body diameter can exceed 40 centimeters, so the distance between the rock thorns needs to be less than 40 centimeters. Rock thorns are just obstacles for sea monsters, and more restraints are needed. You can prepare a boat net. Pictures and words were densely packed together. It made the plan look good. However, whether it was rock thorns, boat nets, or blocked waterways, they were just ordinary obstacles. They could limit Guramikta's movements, but they couldn't hurt it. List didn't think that he, Marcus, Griffin, Russell, Londo, Rick, and Paris, the 7 Earth Knights, could easily kill an intermediate sea monster in front of Guramikta, who knew 4 kinds of water magic. If Paris transformed into a black dragon, she should be able to. But once she transformed into a battle, I'm afraid she would face death. List was not willing to exchange her life for the life of Guramikta. Not to mention that Paris was an important personal guarantee for him to go to the battlefield in the future. Just getting along with her for so many days, he couldn't sacrifice her indifferently. Perhaps seeing List's frown, Achi suddenly said, "Brother, Achi is a magician. Achi can also join the battle. You don't have to fight. When you become a great magician, I will be willing to fight for you. Now, study magic." List smiled and refused. Paris couldn't fight desperately, but she could be a safety lock to hunt Guramikta. In case the hunting operation failed, Paris could save himself and the siren Achi as bait in a critical moment. A short transformation would not reduce her lifespan. In other words, hunting Guramikta would be risky for List, but it would not involve his life. He needed to focus on how to deal a heavy blow to Guramikta. Wow! Wow! Ella, who had woken up from her sleep, ran to lie on List's hair and disturbed his thoughts. But it also brought him new inspiration. He could let Ella plant some thorns on Guramikta. He thought about it for fear that it would be frightened by Guramikta's magic and would kneel down. Back then, Trembling Wood's rock grenade scared Jayla. "By the way, the little elf is useless, but I have a dragon." His eyes suddenly lit up. "I almost forgot that I have fire dragon magic. If I concentrate all the fire dragon magic, I should be able to form a fire dragon that covers a range of tens of meters. With the power of the fire dragon, it can burn Guramikta alive from the inside out." The magic fire dragon's movement speed was not fast. First of all, the actions of Tulamikita must be limited. How to limit it? There were already rock thorns, boat nets, blocking waterways, and other methods. He quickly added, you can use rubber water, dump a lot of rubber into the river, and turn the river into rubber water. With rock thorns, boat nets, and sand, Tulamikita should be stuck in a few minutes, completely immobilized, and let the fire dragon burn it. Movement must be limited, and the next step must be to limit Tulamikita's magic. This probably needs to rely on the temptation of the snake blood fruit to interfere with its four heads and disorient the thinking of the forehead. By the way, the smoke mission that Paris is performing seems to be a research notebook. Will it record how to restrain Tulamikita? For 2 whole hours, he stayed in the worm room, revising the hunting plan back and forth, and basically planned the general process. He confidently gave the plan a code name: Operation Snake Beheading. In ancient times, there was Liu Bang's snake beheading uprising. Today, there is List beheading the snake. Beheading the snake. Beheading the snake. Achi saw List's frown and couldn't help but ask curiously, brother, have you thought of a way to kill Tulamikita? Chapter 325. The existence of Murumita was a threat, and threats should be dealt with as soon as possible. Therefore, after List planned the snake-slaying operation, he rode Black Dragon and galloped to the northern periphery of the Thorns Ridge. He remembered that there was a small river here. The river meandered and was surrounded by bushes. The terrain was not complicated, but there were also ups and downs. List looked carefully and had a rough sketch of the river layout. This was not part of Flower Town, but it was surrounded by wastelands, so there was no need to greet anyone. He directly called Gort. I need you to gather the serfs and widen the river to 2 meters deep, knee-deep. Sir, why are you digging this river? It doesn't seem to be in Flower Town. I'm going to hunt mid-level sea monsters in this river. What? Mid-level sea monster? In the waters near Flower Town, there is a mid-level sea monster, probably a 6-headed sea serpent king. List released the news. Gort was startled. Mid-level sea monster? 6-headed sea serpent king? Sir, this. You don't have to be nervous, you don't have to hunt it, I will deal with it myself. You just need to follow my instructions and set up traps here. Gort looked at List's calm appearance and could not help but dissuade. Sir, you need to be careful, mid-level sea monsters are as powerful as mid-level World of Warcraft. The purple sand crocodiles on Coral Island, even the Count is unwilling to eliminate them. As for this 6-headed sea serpent king, you should be even more cautious. Let the 6-headed sea serpent king ravage the waters of Flower Town? It will attack the flowers at any time, cutting off the connection between Flower Town and Black Horse Island. We will be threatened by it if we don't hunt it down. Seeing that Gort was about to say something, List interrupted him directly. I know what you are worried about. I will be fully prepared to hunt the 6-headed sea serpent king. If things don't work out, I will report to my father and leave it to him to deal with. Sir, I think you should report to the Count now after all. Let me try first. I'll give up if I can't beat him. Asking for help from the Count was indeed a solution, but the Count might not be able to deal with Murumita. In case the hunt is successful, all the gains will inevitably fall into the Count's pocket, and there is also the risk of exposing the siren He. Not to mention now, even without any external assistance, he was confident that with the Flower Town's current strength, he could try to hunt it down. Coupled with the Smoke Mission's chain mission reward, he was still very confident. At worst, if he failed, he would go to the Count for help. Once he had made up his mind, he didn't waver and directly ordered Gort. The news about the mid-level sea monster can only be spread among the town's officials. Don't leak any information. As for the excavation of the river, you and Isaiah can discuss it under other names. You must complete the construction as soon as possible. There was nothing he could do. Gort could only accept the order. As you wish, my lord. Soon, the news spread among the Flower Town's officials. At the luncheon, a heated discussion ensued. List only explained his decision at the beginning, then sat in his chair and watched coldly. His will was unshakable. The rest was up to the officials to make a choice. They could have opinions, they could object loudly, but when he made the final decision, no one was allowed to be negative. Like the gossip in the investigation, List hoped to make His Majesty deeply rooted in the hearts of the people through several political actions. He had a great future, but there was a long way to go to train a group of qualified followers and night squads. When the quarrel ended, List, who was full, slowly said, "You can keep your opinions, but—" He looked around and saw that no one made a sound. He was very satisfied with the current atmosphere. "I have decided to hunt the six-headed sea serpent king. What you need to do is to cooperate and put forward additional opinions to improve the hunting plan. I have handed over the information of the six-headed sea serpent king to Advisor Gort. You go to the administrative office for a meeting to discuss and report back in the evening." After the luncheon, List was still in the mood to take a nap. Paris, who had just woken up from her nap and went out to investigate magic books, came back. "Fortunately, I did not fail," she said easily. "I have found out about the magic books. There is no problem with Elkson. The problem is with another mage he cooperated with to buy the books, Milesi Truth." Milesi Truth? List had never heard of the name. She lives in a small town not far from Coral City. She has lived in seclusion for many years and is in contact with some mages on the outer island. Her magic books are all purchased through mages on the outer islands. What is not normal is the way she treats magic apprentices. When I went to investigate, I happened to meet her. Paris frowned, a disgusted expression on her face. She skinned her magic apprentices alive and did research while skinning them. Then, she spread out her hands. I almost killed her. After interrogating her, I found out that she had used different methods to kill hundreds of magic apprentices. So, I couldn't hold back and twisted her arms, and then— "I'm sorry, Lord Baron, she died from excessive blood loss." Listening to Paris, List was also shocked. He had actually killed hundreds of magic apprentices by skinning them. This kind of mage was really cruel, no less than Curtis Truth from the Spectre ship. No wonder even the smoke mission was triggered. So he just said lightly, "Don't kill people at will next time." This time, since it was an accident that caused death, and it was a person who deserved to die, forget it. Did she leave any books or research notes? I knew you would need these things, so I packed them all and brought them back. There is also a mess of casting materials, and there seems to be a few pieces of magic equipment. Counting the carriages, there were a total of 6 pieces of magic equipment, some of which were magic equipment for amplification and protection. List gave half of it to Paris and the other half to himself. "Here are 3 pieces of magic equipment for protection. You take them as a reward for completing the quest. I'll keep the magic equipment." He was going to give the magic equipment to Achi so that she could be armed. Paris accepted the 3 pieces of magic equipment without hesitation. "Thank you, I will give them to Maggie for protection." He ordered the servants to move the remaining large pile of casting materials to the warehouse, and then moved the magic books and experimental notes collected by Milesi to the study. He said to Paris, who was about to leave, "I have a plan to hunt the intermediate sea monster, the 6-headed King Hydra. I hope you can participate in the hunt. In case the hunt fails, protect me." "This is my job, Lord Baron." Paris smiled. She had recently returned to the free and easy look she had when she first came to Flower Town. "But you are really bold. You even dare to hunt intermediate sea monsters. Isn't it good to enjoy life?" List touched the red-blood sword at his waist. "There are some things you have to do. The 6-headed King Hydra has threatened the development of my territory and the safety of my subjects. I must get rid of this threat. The 6th chapter was delivered. The last 2 hours of the last day. Everyone, do you have a monthly ticket? At present, White was in the 7th place on the monthly ticket list, less than 300 votes away from the first place. The 6th place had a prize of 5,000 yuan, which was very important to White. I wonder if anyone can lend Lao by a helping hand. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.